My name's Marcus Duval, 34 years old, and for the last 6 months I've been working the overnight security shift at the Walmart in Baton Rouge. It isn't glamorous. Hell, it's barely respectable, but it pays time and a half for the graveyard hours, and I needed the extra money to keep up with my medical bills. Most nights were the same. Aisles quiet as a church, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of plastic wrap and cleaning chemicals lingering in the air. I walked the same loops, electronics, groceries, then down the long run of outdoor furniture and seasonal junk. Sometimes I'd stop in the break room for a Coke. Sometimes I'd scroll through my phone when the cameras were still. But a month into the job, I started noticing things. Little things, the kind you wouldn't pay attention to unless you had hours to kill and no one to talk to. The first was the ramen. A stack of beef-flavored packs near the back shelf was missing, but the register count hadn't logged a purchase that night. I figured maybe an employee forgot to scan it at self-checkout. A week later it was granola bars, then bottled water. Petty theft, I thought. Some high schoolers stuffing food into their hoodie. But then it got stranger. One Tuesday morning, I came across a shopping cart in the garden section pushed tight behind a rack of potting soil bags. Inside, empty water bottles, 2 crumpled chip bags, and a blanket pulled from the home goods aisle. Employees swore they hadn't left it there. We laughed it off, but I didn't. From then on, I paid attention. Cameras couldn't see every corner. The aisles bent just enough to create shadows. Our angles left entire sections blind. When I walked through on patrol, I started finding signs of someone using them. Hangers bent out of shape in clothing racks, handprints smudged on glass display cases, shelves shifted just slightly, like someone had slipped between them. The thought crept into my head one night, as I sat alone watching the monitors. What if somebody's living in here? It wasn't impossible. The store was huge. We had restrooms, food, mattresses, even camping gear. If someone knew the schedule, they could move between sections, eat, sleep, and vanish when doors opened at dawn. The idea unsettled me, but it also felt ridiculous, like one of those urban legends kids swap online. Then I saw him. It was around 3:45 a.m., the dead zone when exhaustion sets in. I was walking near toys when I caught movement at the edge of my vision. Not an employee, not a customer. A man, mid-40s maybe, beard trimmed neat, wearing a faded blue polo that looked almost like our uniforms. He didn't run. He didn't freeze. He just turned calmly down another aisle and disappeared. My pulse hammered. I hurried after him, radio clipped in my hand, but by the time I rounded the corner, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just racks of discounted Lego sets staring back at me. I combed the section, aisle by aisle, but found nothing. No backdoor alarm had tripped, no emergency exits opened. The next night, I saw him again, this time slipping past the fishing gear. That was when I knew it wasn't a prank or a coincidence. Someone really was living in Walmart. I tried bringing it up to management. My supervisor chuckled, told me to lay off the energy drinks and focus on catching shoplifters. But I couldn't let it go. I started carrying a small notebook, jotting down every odd detail. 1:12 a.m. Razor package missing from locked case. 2:47 a.m. Faint sound in home goods, like something scraping metal. 3:30 a.m. Cart in blind spot behind patio sets. I mapped the store as if I were him. Where would I hide? How would I eat, sleep, stay clean? Turns out Walmart gives you everything you need if you're patient. Soap and deodorant in aisle 9. Fresh socks and underwear and clothing. Tents and sleeping bags in camping. Food everywhere. What chilled me wasn't that it was possible. It was that he'd already done it. About 3 weeks into this obsession, I found proof. Near the hardware section, behind stacked paint cans, I discovered a duffel bag. Inside, toothbrush, razor, half-used deodorant, 3 packs of beef jerky, bottled water, and something that froze me, pages and pages of hand-drawn maps. They weren't just doodles. They were blueprints of the store. Every camera angle marked, every blind spot shaded in. Employee routines tracked by time. Even my patrol routes, sketched in careful lines. He'd been watching me. My first instinct was to run to the office, show the evidence, call the cops. But something made me stop. If I left the bag there, he'd know I found it. If I took it, he'd know I was onto him. I decided to wait. The following nights were torture. I barely slept during the day. At work, I felt eyes on me constantly. He knew the store better than I ever would, slipping through gaps, using silence as a weapon. On Thursday, I caught the faintest whisper of movement near electronics. I rounded the corner with my flashlight and froze. There he was, standing 20 feet away, holding one of those fold-out camping stools. He wasn't eating or hiding. He was just watching me. Our eyes locked for maybe 3 seconds before he stepped backward, slow as a shadow, and melted into the shelves. I couldn't move. My throat went dry. I realized something then. This wasn't about survival. He wasn't homeless, desperate, or out of options. He was practicing, testing me. 2 nights later, the storm hit. Heavy rain, thunder, the kind that rattles the glass doors. Employees left early. It was just me, the cameras, and the hum of empty aisles. Around 4 a.m., I decided to check the garden section. My radio crackled softly against my chest as I pushed open the double doors. That's when I noticed it. Pallets of soil shifted to create a narrow corridor, a funnel leading into the shadows. I stepped inside, flashlight cutting through dust. At the end of the path, he was waiting, middle-aged, calm as ever, holding a box cutter like it was just another tool. The blade gleamed under the light. His binder of maps sat open on a chair beside him, pages fluttering in the draft. "You're early," he said. His voice was steady, practiced. I lifted my radio, thumb fumbling for the button, but he tilted his head. "Don't." He wasn't threatening. He wasn't even angry. He was patient, like a teacher correcting a student. 6 minutes from now," he murmured. "You usually walk toward groceries. I planned for that, but you came here instead." My stomach turned. He hadn't just been watching me. He'd been predicting me. I tried to back away, but I felt resistance at the door. He'd stacked carts across the exit, wedged so tight I couldn't push through. The realization hit like ice water. He'd been preparing for this exact moment. I don't remember drawing my flashlight back, but I must have, because suddenly I was swinging it at his hand. The box cutter clattered against the floor. He didn't flinch. He lunged, hitting me square in the chest, driving me back against the metal racks. The impact knocked my radio loose. It hit the concrete with a sharp crack. I struggled, elbowed, fought with everything in me, but he was strong, far stronger than he looked. His face hovered inches from mine, expressionless, his breath calm despite the struggle. "You shouldn't have seen me," he whispered. I kicked wildly, finally connecting with his knee. He staggered just enough for me to scramble sideways, grabbing the fallen radio. I screamed into it, calling for help, though I knew no one was listening. No employees, no backup, just me in a store built like a maze. He bent to pick up the box cutter again. The last image burned into my memory, the blade glinting as he raised it, his eyes flat and certain, and his voice, soft, measured, like he was reciting something rehearsed. "You never saw me here." And then the lights flickered, plunging the aisle into humming darkness. I woke up later in the hospital with stitches along my arm and chest, my head bandaged. Police questioned me, management questioned me, but the man was gone. No sign of him. No bag, no maps, no fingerprints. They wrote it off as a delusional break from exhaustion. My story didn't stick, but I know what I saw. And every time I walk into a Walmart now, I scan the corners, the blind spots, the racks that bend into shadows. Because he's still out there, patient, practiced, and one day, he'll finish what he started. I still take the night shift at the Walmart off Desert Boulevard because nights pay a little more and the aisles are quiet enough to hear your own cartwheels complain. I clock in, tuck a box cutter into my pocket, and go where the printer sends me. Paper towels, pet food, seasonal. Routine keeps the store from boiling over. The freezers sigh on schedule. The floor crew loops like satellites. By midnight, the building has a heartbeat you can set your watch by. He stepped into that heartbeat as if he'd been invited. Empty cart, sunburnt forehead, calm like a librarian. "Evening," he said, and the word was so ordinary it made the fluorescent lights louder. "I'm looking for pre-band batteries," he added, "and the mass filtration units. The touring box art. You don't sell them yet." "We have Duracell and the house brand," I said. "That's it." "You will," he said, kind as a teacher letting me finish being wrong. After the fluorine recall, August. He called himself Levi and spoke in UPC numbers the way lifers do. He asked for shelf-stable milk with a date we didn't carry, water tabs with tamper-proof holograms, sunscreen in gray tubes I'd never stocked. When I keyed the SKUs he rattled off, they were ghosts. Nothing active, nothing on order. He wasn't rude, just painfully polite, which in retail is its own alarm. I called LP. Security walked him to the little glass office behind customer service with a paper cup of water and a smile that said, "We're being nice so no one says lawsuit later." In the office, he kept his hands visible and answered questions as if he'd been rehearsing them for years. When El Paso Behavioral sent a tech to drive him over for a quick evaluation, he thanked everyone by name. Before he left, he placed a tan leather notebook on the counter. "In case I'm delayed," he told me, like he was apologizing for late freight. I opened it at 3 in the morning in the break room, telling myself I was only holding it for when he came back. The first page read like a manager's pre-list written by someone who had already lived through it. August, battery resin advisory. September, employee cooler incident. October, district meeting, locks. Under October, a line in neat block caps. Doors that open on paper, not in heat. I'm 34 with a lower back like old cardboard and a mother who leaves voicemails about vitamin D. I fix small things before they turn into disasters. 3 nights after Levi, we unloaded a pallet of baby formula with a lot code that matched exactly what he had warned a young mom about. The register barked, "Do not sell." Recall. Management followed the flowchart and moved on. I tried to. Then the heat came like an iron left on fabric. Our walk-in condenser ran past safety. The floor sweated, and Tino slipped trying to save a crate of yogurt. 2 fingers, taped and splinted. In the system, it was a safety incident. In my head, it put a dot under September. Employee cooler incident. I took the notebook home. My apartment's swamp cooler pushed warm air around, and the leather cover went tacky in my hands. Between UPCs I could verify and codes I couldn't were sentences that didn't care if I believed them. Shade cloth. Limits on ice. Count exits out loud. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother. Not Peebles, our manager. Not Tino, who was trying to DoorDash with a clumsy hand. The only person who knew was whoever wrote on the whiteboard in the break room a week later, in an unfamiliar but unmistakable hand. August doesn't end for everybody. I wiped it off with my sleeve and pretended the blue smear wasn't in Levi's neat style. What didn't move were the names in the notebook. Under September, a list had begun in the same hand as the months. Tino, hand. Criselda, heat. Daniel, depart. I told myself it was a memory aid, not a prediction. I put a pen to the page and circled my own name as if attention were a shield. The breaking point came on a thin staff Sunday when the front end looked like a dam made of smiles. I was in receiving, cutting plastic off a tower of ramen when the motion light in the far bay flicked on. Carts scrape tile differently, depending on who's pushing them. Employees are efficient. Customers wander. Whoever was pushing that cart wanted me to hear it. Squeal. Pause. Squeal. Stores closed. I called. Evening, Daniel. A voice said from the dark beyond the circle of light. Calm. Patient. Levi. Names help a person lean, he said, as if we were resuming a conversation we had paused for years. You held mine. Good. You're not allowed back here. I'm not anywhere I'm allowed, he said, and stepped into the light. Same sneakers. Red dust in the seams. Hair cut shorter. Rested in a way that made me tired. You left your notebook. I left you yours. He leaned on the handle like a manager on an audit walk. You have a dangerous store. We have a busy store. Busy is the camouflage of dangerous. He talked about door chains and 2-finger locks, about shrunk budgets called safety, about egress routes that exist on paper and vanish in heat. He talked about gray SUVs where new hires sat for 5 minutes too long because the locks clicked and nobody knew how to find their panic in silence. You're not a time traveler, I said. No. So why act like one? Prophecy is just patterns spoken with confidence, he said. Confidence persuades the people who get paid to doubt. Tell a manager a door will fail at 9:02 and they'll be there at 9. Tell them your doors are out of spec and they'll nod at payroll. Who are you? Someone who didn't make it past August, he said. He let the words hang until I could feel the shape of them. Different year. Different store. He walked to the dock door, touched the bar, then glanced at the chain coiled on the stool like a sleeping snake. He didn't pull it tight. He just showed me how easy it would be. The self-checkouts beeped out front. On the whiteboard, someone had drawn a bubble letter "Be safe" with little hearts. "Stop," I said. My voice sounded thin even to me. He stopped. Didn't smile. Good. He rolled the cart forward until it pressed my leg into the ramen. Not a hit. A demonstration carried one step further. "Say your name." "You know my name." "Say it." "Lean." "Daniel Salazar." Again. The defrost cycle dimmed the store like a long blink. The motion light over us popped and died. Blue aquariums flickered to life at the front. We stood in a dish of dark, and he spoke like a trainer coaxing a skittish dog. "Now tell me the exits that are real." I recited the ones I had read in his notebook until they felt like prayer. Front doors, garden gate, receiving dock, side hall by pharmacy. I tagged the ones we believed but weren't. Locked cages, false turns, pallets across yellow lines. He nodded. "And if this were fire?" "I'd cut the chain." I lifted the box cutter. "And if someone cut the power?" "The door's open. They're fail-safe." He raised an eyebrow like the word was a joke. Somewhere in my head, a gray SUV idled. "And if they don't?" He lunged, not fast, not theatrical, and pinned me with the cart again. Cardboard bit my spine. Leather rasped my arm. "If they don't," he said, "what do you do?" I shoved the cart back so it rattled. I kicked the chain under the ladder. I yanked the dock latch and pulled hard enough for the sound to carry. I marked the handle with a red X so big no one would miss it. I didn't call LP. I didn't radio Peebles. I did the one thing he wasn't asking for. I made a decision in the place where decisions get people written up. "Good," he said again, and something like relief touched his face and was gone. He palmed one of the notebooks and slid it under his arm. "That one is yours. Replace what I guessed with what's true now." "Who put you in charge of my fear?" "Someone who remembers what it felt like when the doors didn't open." He touched the dock button. It stayed lit and did nothing. He didn't look surprised. Panic does the math for you. Heat plus door plus time. The air turned thick. Sweat made the metal feel like skin. He didn't lay a hand on me. He just stood aside so I could see that his body wasn't the obstacle. Somewhere a cashier called my name and the sound didn't reach. The building had a heartbeat and it was running. I cut the pallet wrap, built a staircase out of ramen, and climbed to the emergency cage. I kicked the horizontal bar until a bad weld cracked. I squeezed through and the cool from the corridor hit me like an answer that finally balanced. When I turned back, Levi was gone. Only the cart remained, one bad while ticking like a metronome. We filed an incident report. Maintenance logged the door. District arrived with clipboards and expressions that hate liability more than they hate people. Cameras showed me moving too fast and a motion light flashing at the wrong time. No Levi. He had leaned into an angle the cameras don't drink. I still work nights. Tino came back with a hand that won't bend right. Peebles transferred to a different store with its own doors to believe in. Sometimes a gray SUV idles in the lot, and I pretend it's a parked car and not a page turning. I kept the notebook and stripped out the prophecy. I wrote our real exits. Where the bolt cutters live. Which cooler floor sweats. What time the self-checkouts drown. On the inside cover I wrote, "Doors that open on paper, not in heat." When the lights dip for defrost, I practice saying the exits. Not because I believe in time travel. Because I've learned how little it takes. Heat, a chain, a confident voice, to make a person accept a door that won't open. On a Thursday in late October, I was zoning batteries at 301 when I heard cart wheels choose the worst lane again. Squeal. Steady. A hand slid a tin notebook onto the shelf beside me as neatly as new stock. This one had no calendar. Only names, beginning with mine, then room for others, and a title in block caps. Who makes it past August? I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I finished zoning, clocked out, and walked through doors that opened because we had made them open. Outside, the night was a hairdryer set to low. No SUV, just a single cart with one bad wheel, ticking its patient little metronome into the dark. I kept walking, because stopping felt like agreeing with the dark. I don't tell people I work security at Walmart. I'm a contractor who makes cameras behave, running cable, syncing clocks to an offline time source, nursing recorders at 3 a.m. Roswell pays extra if you'll sit alone in the DVR closet under fluorescent winter. The footage kept looping, Lila the night manager said, handing me keycards and metallic coffee. By 12:41 a.m., I had the NVR mirrored. 48 cameras. 265 sloppy overlays. The store after midnight is quiet. At 2:17 and 9 seconds a.m. Camera 12 blinked. Sliding doors still. A woman in a gray hoodie approached and did not slow. She met her reflection and kept going. No relay click, no shatter, no timestamp jump. I scrubbed frame by frame. Compression can smear a person through glass, but reflections held. Hood, ceiling grid, parking lot glow. Next frame, one tile inside, thread through a needle. I wrote 12A door and kept moving. Camera 27, self-checkout, same second. She scanned groceries while the cashier chatted. Totals rolled. Camera 44, garden center. Lock engaged. She carried a bag of potting soil to a car that wasn't there. The bag settled into air and stayed. Camera 8, party supplies. She looked at the dome and then wasn't in the next frame. All 4 timestamps were exact. I keep a bored face around weirdness. My heart sprinted, my hands stayed steady. I pulled audio from self-checkout, filtered AC, boosted sibilance. Card or cash? The cashier asked. Card, she said. Then, too soft for a normal recorder, but they're in the waveform. Hi, Daniel. A beat later. They'll notice you noticed. I hadn't told Lila my last name. I did the normal things. Re-encode. Check the drawer. Call the clerk. He remembered vitamins and a charger. Doors opening as usual. I logged the anomalies and emailed a 5-second clip of camera 12 to the corporate inbox. When I hit send, the clock said 3:03. At 3:12, the NVR warned, sync offset, 2. 3s. I synced against our offline clock. All cameras obediently stamped 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 26 seconds. The 4 clips kept 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 9 seconds like a medal. I unplugged 2 cameras and rebooted. The dead feed still showed the woman walking at the same time, cutting across the present like wire. My phone buzzed. A dead group chat lit with Roswell Walmart glitch. A thumbnail of my door clip posted at 2:45. I hadn't mailed corporate until 3:03. Lila knocked. You good? Any gray hoodie? I asked. We're closed, she said, uneasy now. Log showed at 2:14 a.m. Connection from inside, visitor, terminal 2, the photo kiosk. Escalating privileges to the NVR. Too clean to feel real, and yet there it was. By 4 a.m., oddities stacked like quiet snow. A pallet jack rolled 3 inches. An end cap blinked from Easter to summer and back. Everything clung to 2:17. At 4:50, I opened a live feed of frozen foods. The aisle was empty. She walked into frame as if cut from recorded time and pasted into the present. Same gray hoodie. Same unbothered pace. Overlay, 4 hours, 50 minutes, and 31 seconds. She paused by chicken nuggets and raised her face to the bubble. A small pressure change brushed the closet, like an elevator taking a breath. She found me. The feed stuttered 1 frame, and her face filled my monitor. No pan, no zoom. Pores, a badly re-sewn hood seam. My headset crackled and her voice, clean as card, said, "They noticed." My name came later, in the air behind me. Daniel. I didn't swivel. The room cooled past what the AC can do. The powered-off backup monitor caught a faint reflection. A gray hood standing where the closet shouldn't permit a person. "Don't move," she whispered. "If you move, it chooses." What chooses? The path. You think you're on one track. You've been next to it for hours. I kept my eyes on the live feed, which should have mirrored me in the freezer doors. It didn't. The aisle was empty. She wasn't on the feed. She was in here, where I refuse cameras while I work. "You're in 4 places," I said. "No," she said. "I'm in 1. This place is several." Corporate pinged. "Asset protection here. Verify sole operator." "Yes," I said. Pressure leaned on the closet door, testing, not knocking. Lila called as asset protection added. "We're dispatching a technician to secure physical media. If I turned, I'd know something real, and I'd make them count me." "Watch," she said, tapping the dead monitor. For a heartbeat, it flashed me from above, hunched in my freeze, then sank back to black. "I can't fix this," I said. "I didn't ask you to," she said. "I told you it would notice." The lock chirped. Our closet stays hard-locked after midnight. Lila doesn't have the code. Someone toggled it on the network. The door opened 3 inches. "Daniel," she called. "2 men from corporate need the drives. Rule, no surrender without a copy." I palmed the SSD taped under the desk. "This is not a story," the hood said. "You'll be linked to clips you didn't send, tagged in chats you don't use. They'll make you a thread, then cut it." Two men stepped in. Polo's the right navy, faces the right amount of featureless. "Mr. Ruiz? We'll take it from here," one said, already at the NVR with a key that shouldn't fit and did. "I need a minute to prep a handoff," I said. "You can prep while we mirror," he said. The hood's bad stitch caught light. "Do you want to keep the part of you that knows?" she asked. I pocketed the SSD, angled my knee to bump the backup monitor if I rose. The men unwound cables. I stood. A path chose. Everything that could be a camera became a witness. The dead monitor flashed static, then the hallway view where no one stood. The frozen foods feed showed me walking down that aisle, hands empty, calm as if going for a soda. The closet, occupied and tense, briefly existed nowhere at all. Asset protection said, relieved, "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Ruiz." Warm breath found my ear. "They keep you when you move toward what they can count," she said. "Now you'll live in playback." I reached for the door and found only wall. The store's geometry had shifted. In reflection, I watched myself reach frozen foods, meet the camera with a hollow face, and vanish by choosing an angle the lens couldn't see. Lila made a small wounded sound. One of the men said, "There," like arriving at an address. I pressed a cut palm against my jeans and watched a dark coin spread. "What happens to you?" I asked. She didn't answer. In the black mirror, her outline thinned. In the bright feeds, the men lifted a drive into a static bag. "We appreciate your discretion," the voice in my headset said. They left. Lila stood at the door, trying to reconcile a man in a chair with a hallway that didn't line up. "Are you okay?" she asked me in the space where the corridor should be. "I'm here," I said, hearing the cavern in it. Later, clips I didn't send will trend for a night. People will circle the bad stitch and call it an eye. I'll be tagged, untagged, called a liar. What I keep is penny coffee, a locked chirp, and the frame where she was closer than screen should allow. I knew, without magic, that the world can run beside itself and never merge until a person moves at the wrong moment. Now, when I pass glass, I check if I reflect. I keep my hands still when a camera can see. On sleepless nights, I say my name softly to hear if anyone behind me answers. Sometimes the closet smells of cold air and laundry soap, and the dead monitor holds a film like a breath. I do not move toward it. I let it count me as zero and keep my path. I used to think patterns were for people who couldn't stomach chaos. I told myself journalism was about the single hard fact, not the grid behind it. The year my rent doubled and my assignments shrank to listicles, I started seeing the grid. It hid in reader comments that kept repeating the same line. Did anyone else feel weird in the store today? Different names, different towns, same sentence. I dismissed it. Then I started pinning them to a map. The email that made me drive came from a night stalker in Nebraska. He wrote in present tense. Lights flicker at 12 past. The break room radio flips to a high whine you feel in your teeth. The floor plan shifts after lunch. He said people lost their carts. Managers handed out bottled water like the store was a heat wave. When he didn't reply to my follow-up, I told myself he'd found a better job. He had not. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I covered bond votes and counterfeit baby formula. Then I got laid off and wrote about secret airport lounges for exposure. I know the smell of panic, plastic, and overheated speaker wire. The first store smelled like that. A highway box with cheerful banners. Inside, the ceiling sighed. The floor hummed softly, like a sleeping animal I didn't want to wake. Nothing happened at first. That's how wrongness works. It hides in normal. I walked with a basket knocking my thigh. The music was a modern country remix I've heard 1,000 times. In toys, plastic kitchens repeated the same sales loop until kids covered their ears. I asked an associate for surge protectors. She pointed without looking, and the tiny mic at her collar blinked. Escalation 1 came stupidly. A price checker chirped as if it knew me. My phone shivered with a Bluetooth request from Facility A. I declined. 2 hours later, a voice announced a restocking interval and asked customers to remain calm during temporary spatial adjustments. No one looked up. My recording caught only a soft hiss where the voice should have been. I left with trail mix I didn't want. In the lot, Shoppers stood in neat little islands around trunks, heads cocked like they were listening for thunder. Messages hit me all week. A cashier in Oklahoma, a greeter in North Carolina, a nurse in Colorado who swore one woman went into the bathroom and two came out with the same red purse. Small things. Together, a hum. In Kansas, I taped a template into my notebook. Sounds, lights, signage, clocks, exits. 2 fire doors were propped with yellow cones. A manager with a stylus tapped by the entrance like he was playing a simple game. A training poster half hidden near photo, steadying presence. Words to use when guests are disoriented. My first whistleblower met me at a diner in Missouri. She asked me to call her C. She brought schedules and a phone without a case. They don't like cases, she said. Morning meetings used the phrase behavioral fidelity like small talk. Friction events were staged. Aisle closures, conflicted signs, soft changes to sound. Why? I asked. To see how we react to them reacting, C said. They watch who follows the signs and who walks out. They make us write about how scared people look. I know what scared looks like. She had a 12-year-old and 2 jobs. She was scared now, hands around her mug like she was warming an injured bird. Later I found patents and quietly shelved proposals from think tanks with names like Civic Dynamics. Maybe nothing, but the language matched: adaptive retail environment, subaudable cues, compliance temperature. Escalation 2 came in Colorado. At self-checkout, the scale called my body an unexpected item. An associate scanned a badge and told me to watch the screen. My outline appeared in wireframe with pulsing dots at pockets, seams, shoes. Just making sure the scale knows you, he said, like we were dating. I set a date. One more store, at night, with a stopwatch. Iowa, 11:17 p.m. Competent stars. Inside, a restock. A safety vest with a QR code. An easel sign. Lock in for your convenience. Brief door pauses during shift transitions. Thank you for helping us help you. 20 minutes passed like a normal errand. I timed playlist seams. I wrote down facings below target. At 11:40 the lights pinched, not darker, just nearer. A push alert vibrated. Quiet hour in effect. Help US study stress and make stores calmer. The opt-out link was grayed out. Escalation 3 knocked a hole in me. A woman reached for bleach, then froze. A shelf tag read $4. $99 and $49. $99 superimposed. 2 associates arrived at once. Twin reassurances braided together. Then, how did it make you feel? She said, confused. One tapped a box. Somewhere, a light went green. At midnight, the exits paused. They didn't slam or lock. They became indifferent to leaving. A low chime opened from everywhere. A screen near customer service slid into calm faces and bullet points, steadying presence. A store map tensed into zones: comfort, direction, control. I told myself to breathe. My hand wouldn't let go of the basket. Then a voice made of polite air said, "Aaron, you're doing great." Or I decided it said. I turned and hit a sock display. 2 shoppers stared past me at an imaginary horizon. The associate at the desk smiled the exact width of the training poster. "If you're disoriented," she said, "we can guide you." She didn't ask how I knew my name had been used. I raised my phone like a talisman. The screen went black, then a white square bloomed. "How safe do you feel?" 1 to 5. Honesty helps everyone. I pressed 2 because fear makes me contrary. A tone pressed into my teeth. The air changed rhythm. My tongue went numb at the edges. My legs chose the bathroom for me. The mirror had a sticker, "You're not being recorded." I laughed too loud. The faucet spoke to my watch and turned on before my hands arrived. When I looked up, 2 mannequins from clothing stood by the stalls. Of course someone had wheeled them in. Of course I hadn't noticed them arrive. "Sir," said a voice. The associate from the desk stood in the doorway, body drawn in non-threatening geometry. Her tablet showed effect log with my name at the top and a rating that slid like a heart monitor. "I don't consent," I said. "Of course," she said, and lowered the tone in the ceiling like she was lowering the room. I thought about C and her 1 mug. I thought about my 16 tabs of easy-to-debunk connections. I thought about the exit and the honesty of outside air. "We can escort you," she said. "Your basket will be waiting if you choose to return." The floor plan changed. The aisle to baked goods now ended at seasonal decor. The mannequins flanked the pharmacy window like they were waiting for prescriptions. A man in a safety vest wheeled a rack into my path. Quick pause, he said. We're learning. He made we sound familial and learning sound merciful. I let the basket go and my hand shook like it had held a flame. Please remain calm, said the ceiling. I wanted to pound on glass, but attention had been made into air, distributed, flavored, rationed. 2 shoppers froze at the same second, a school of fish moving because the water moved. A camera bulb winked. The exit door breathed metal and sealed. My face in its window looked like someone trying to remember lines. Just making sure you're you, said the associate behind me. On her tablet, my wireframe silhouette glowed with dots of heat. Compliance temp rose when I inhaled and spiked when I looked at the door. I reached for the crash bar. No alarm. Only a lower tone poured down. My knees softened like they'd been convinced. The manager with the stylus arrived, ordinary as rain. We're almost done, he said, and maybe he used my name, and maybe I only heard it. If you can mark your answer, we'll open the doors. He held up a phone with that same white square. How safe do you feel? I pressed 3. I wanted to press the edge of the world. The door slid. Night air held me like water. I didn't run. I walked. In the lot, my phone lit again. Thanks for participating in Quiet Hour. Your experience matters. A $5 coupon pulsed. I closed it. It reopened. Honesty helps everyone. I threw the phone in the back seat and drove without the radio, flinching at green lights that changed too obediently. Days later, I tried to pitch the story. Editors said, intriguing, but thin. Could I get someone on the record? Could I film a replication? Could I prove the tones weren't in my head? I pasted my rules into emails like talismans. Check the clocks, count the exits, record the questions. I added and subtracted inches from my apartment door as if safety could be done by math. A package arrived with no return address. A vest with a QR code. No note. The code scanned to nothing. The vest fell into my closet with the weight of a wet towel. My inbox filled with strangers who felt strange in lighting aisles and freezer sections. I answered what I could. I slept in bursts. Sometimes I park in that Iowa lot by daylight to prove it's only a store. I watch cart trains rattle. I watch kids negotiate with parents. I count to 5 and ask how impatient I'm getting. When I catch my reflection, I check if I lag. I don't. Not always. Then a soft tone rides the air from a backing car, and I measure my flinch. I keep writing because it keeps me outside. I index quiet hours and door pauses. I ask for NDAs I won't get. I collect coupons without scanning them and tuck them into a drawer like false awards. Once, on the train, 2 strangers froze at the same second to check their phones, and I nearly applauded. I wake too early and imagine a stylist somewhere logging my effect. On good days, awareness. On bad days, compliance. Yes, I went back in. Not to be brave. To be sure. I parked by the doors like I might need seconds. Inside, the music was new but the temperature was the same. I walked the perimeter. I picked up socks and put them down. A manager asked if he could help me find anything and glanced at a tablet, nodding to a rhythm only he heard. We're trying a layout where the things you need come to you, he said. 2 associates rolled a freestanding mirror toward us. My face swam closer, multiplied by the light, into a stranger. We measure comfort in reflections now, he said. It's faster. I left before midnight. In the car, I watched the doors. People came out. People went in. A breeze lifted plastic wrap from the asphalt. On my thigh, my phone waited politely. Quiet hour results ready. View? I stared until the screen dimmed. That felt like resistance. Maybe it was. But every story I write now curves around the same prompt. Last week, C texted me a new photo of the poster. Anchor, ground, breathe, mirror, follow. She asked how I was sleeping. I lied. Tonight the drawer of coupons won't close. They've swollen with humidity or guilt. Outside, the city plays its own tones. Brakes, sirens, alarms. I pick up my notebook and write the date. I write, check the clocks, count the exits, answer the question. Then I mark a number I don't believe, and the room, patient and polite, records the tremor in my hand. I sit there a long time with the pen hovering, trying to be braver than my wrist. The number looks small in the margin, but it feels loud. Somewhere, a gentle chime arrives as if from the ceiling of a place I am not in, and I understand I've brought the room home. The page waits. I steady my hand and finish the line. I breathe. I was supposed to wipe a laptop, invoice, and drive home. That was the shape of my day. A clean task, a gas station burrito, the slow return to my apartment off SE 14th in Bentonville. The laptop belonged to a mid-level guy at Walmart's home office, facilities ops, according to the email signature, and the handoff happened in the visitor lot across from the beige building that could pass for any corporate headquarters in America, if not for the flag-sized logo in the atrium. He was pink-cheeked and harried and grateful I could take it same day. "Just malware," he said, like he was asking me to fix a toaster, and off he went. Back at my desk, I set my own machine to clone the drive and watch the progress bar leak forward. I've done freelance IT for 7 years. People keep trash in their computers, ancient installers, unlabeled folders, entire lives dragged onto the desktop like it's a kitchen counter. I've learned to be respectful. I've also learned that when you see a folder named Billing Q3, Final, you're going to open it. The laptop wasn't special. Lenovo. Stickers from a charity 5K. Coffee crust in the hinge. The malware presented itself like they all do, as a carnival of pop-up toolbars. And I'd already cleared that sludge by the time I noticed a VeraCrypt container size just big enough to be interesting and small enough that it might not be work stuff. The file name was uncreative, personal. Password guessing is half faith and half pattern recognition. Everyone thinks they're unpredictable until they aren't. I tried the employee's kid's name from his Outlook signature, capitalized, then the dog's name from his Instagram. No luck. I almost closed the whole thing when I remembered the sticky note under the keyboard I'd peeled back to check the vents. 4 digits and a star. His office alarm code, probably. I tried it. The container opened to a single PDF, Nexus_archive_v12. PDF 3. 6 megabytes, last modified 8 days ago. The icon wore the red ribbon you get when a document is marked sensitive. The title page was stamped with 2 seals, one Walmart internal, blue sunburst, home office behavioral, and one that looked like a government agency, without saying which. I scrolled. 47 pages. Distribution list. Abbreviations. Phrases no normal person needs, like compliance capture, stimulus ladders, associate scripting. A diagram of a store floor with circles and arrows and customer heat map in the legend. I don't know when curiosity shifted into something colder. The summary said Project Nexus had been designed to measure and influence shopper behavior under controlled stress. It described incidents, which I assumed meant the usual stuff, shoplifting, weather, the rolling chaos of retail, until I read the examples. Stage 1. Controlled lighting perturbation and audio chimes to induce mild cognitive fatigue. Stage 2. Conflicting signage instructions, timed interruptions, altered aisle flow. Stage 3. Public safety alerts, code atom, severe weather, introduced with associate-led choreography. Stage 4. High-stress stimulus, drill, escalating briefly past stated parameters, then resolved. Stage 5. De-escalation, recovery queue, incentive distribution. It was so cleanly written, I wanted to believe it was a proposal someone had already killed. Then I hit the historical trials appendix. Rogers Supercenter, 2018. Blackout drill with gust front messaging. Fayetteville Neighborhood Market, 2020. Multiple code atom alerts in sequence with misdirection of exit flow. I remembered the Rogers event. My mother called me that day, furious she'd been locked in for 15 minutes as associates blocked the sliding doors and asked her to please wait. We'd laughed it off as Walmart being Walmart. The report logged shopper agitation curves and, in a table, incidents of compliance gestures, people returning to carts, accepting vouchers, smiling. It made humanity into a line graph that rose and fell on command. I copied the file to my desktop. I told myself it was professional paranoia. If something went sideways on the company laptop, I'd want a copy to prove where I found it. I clicked through page after page, my stomach kneading itself when a table labeled active schedules appeared, dates and store numbers all over the country. Some were flagged green, complete, some yellow, pending. There were several within an hour's drive. Next to them, in a small column, names. Not customers' names, but liaison, DHS S&T, and observer, Bentonville Behavioral, and partner, Field Asset Protection. I had to Google some acronyms. I wished I hadn't. I took a break. I stood in my tiny kitchen and peeled an orange and tried to think about anything else. It's not a crime to look at a file someone left open, I told myself. It's a gray area. You could argue chain of custody, accidental access. It didn't help that on page 47 there was a section titled Non-Compliant Variables. I didn't understand it for a minute. It listed employees and contractors who had deviated from scripted protocols with short notes, asked questions, attempted to copy materials, observed drills from outside. The list had dates, and a new entry, with a timestamp from that morning, had my name. I checked my network tab by impulse, the way you pat your pocket for your keys. A system process I didn't recognize was nibbling bandwidth. I killed it. I unhooked the laptop from my Wi-Fi and moved it to the far end of the desk like it might bite. When I looked back at my phone, I had a new text from an unknown number. Please confirm this is Daniel Ruiz. There was a link. I put the phone face down. Returning the laptop felt like handling a hot pan. I restored the obvious, left the rest untouched, and met the man in the same visitor lot. He seemed lighter, like the weight of a problem had been moved to someone else's shoulders. He signed. "Thanks, Daniel," he said, like we were friends. On the drive home, the world looked aggressively normal. The Sonic on Walton, the lines at the left turn arrow. I sent the PDF to a burner email and then to a journalist whose Substack I read, attaching a short note and a photo of the title page. The first bounced with a cryptic policy violation. The second showed as delivered. I paced my apartment, opened and shut the fridge, checked the file again. The active schedules grid had a line highlighted in yellow. Bentonville. Today, 2100, at 2057, my living room lights hiccuped. Off on, a rhythm that wasn't the utility company's kind of chaos. Stage 1. I told myself it was coincidence. It happened twice more, in perfect intervals. Stage 2 arrived in the form of my phone blaring an emergency alert for severe weather. The sky outside was a smooth bowl of dark. No wind. No thunder. The alert repeated with the typos I recognized from the PDF examples. I should have left then. I should have walked out and kept walking. The knock at the door was 3 soft taps, then a pause, then 2 more. Through the peephole, 2 men in jeans and polos holding plastic Walmart bags. There was something theatrical about the bags that bothered me. If you know you're being watched, dress like something benign. "Mr. Ruiz?" one called through the door. He sounded like a human resources professional at the end of a long day. Quick chat. My lock clicked from the outside. It wasn't subtle, more like a small pop as a magnet released, and then the knob turned. I keep a length of broken broom handle in the umbrella stand. I don't know why, but I grabbed it, ran for the bedroom, and slid the window up. The screen resisted and then gave. I dropped to the gravel under the fire escape and scraped my palms bloody. Someone called my name again, calm as if reading roll. I didn't look up. My car started because I'd parked face out. I drove without turning on my headlights until I hit the street. Adrenaline makes you do literal things. It made me aim for the one public place open late where I knew there would be cameras and witnesses and Wi-Fi. The Bentonville Supercenter glowed on the horizon like the only ship at sea. Inside, the store was half quiet, that odd late-hour hush where everything echoes. There were more associates than customers. That registered as wrong, and then I told myself I was paranoid, because paranoia and being right share a wall. I beelined to electronics, bought a cheap flash drive with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and sank onto a bench near the pharmacy to connect to guest Wi-Fi. I uploaded the PDF to 3 clouds, 2 paste bins, and a dead Facebook account I hadn't touched in years. Each time, the progress bar climbed, stalled, and completed. I tried to feel relief. On the ceiling, a camera dome stared at me like a glossy eye. "Code Adam," a woman's voice announced over the intercom, soft and trained. "We're looking for a boy in a red hoodie, approximately 6 years old, last seen near toys." The associates around me snapped into motion. Gates at the entrances slid halfway. Doors clicked. It was by the book. It was also the exact example in the Project Nexus appendix, down to the color of the hoodie. I stood up without meaning to. A security guy in a blue vest, asset protection, the euphemism, appeared from nowhere and smiled. "Sir, we just need everyone to wait a moment." "I'm leaving," I said. "We'll have you out in just a minute," he said, and that was the sentence that felt like a script. The second announcement came faster, voice steady. "Severe weather warning. Please move to the center aisles. The gates dropped all the way. The hum of the refrigerators in the back seemed to grow louder. An elderly couple looked up like they were in a museum. I was the only person moving the wrong direction. Another associate materialized at the end of the aisle with a cart full of clearance bins, blocking a clean line to the garden exit. The AP guy kept pace beside me, genial. I'm serious, I said, louder than I meant. I'm leaving. Daniel, he said, and put a hand on my elbow. He said my name the way a teacher says it to a kid with a question he doesn't want to answer. My instinct was violent. I yanked away hard. He slipped on his own sensible shoes and fell back into a rack of summer towels. The thud broke something, protocol or patience. I ran, past seasonal, past grocery, through a disorienting maze of end caps deliberately misaligned to force slower movement. Stage 2, steerable flow. The garden center door would have been my exit if the chain wasn't already threaded through the bars. I veered into a stock corridor and saw a red exit sign and shouldered through it into a concrete back lot that smelled like old pallets and rain that hadn't come. I had the childish idea that if I got outside, the game would stop. It didn't. 2 men were already there. Polos. Jeans. One held a plain folder and the other nothing at all. Between us, 10 yards of slick concrete and the knowledge we'd all seen each other before. This is unnecessary, Folder said. We just need to talk about where you got a certain document. You're trespassing, the other added, like he'd learned the sentence phonetically. I didn't see the third until his arm hooked mine from behind. He'd come through a side door I hadn't clocked. He was fast, and I'm not. The broom handle in my hand made a dry crack when I swung it backward and connected with someone's forearm. He hissed something that sounded truly human. For a second, I was free. Then a shock bit my lower back and opened my body like a moth. I collapsed. The taser didn't feel like the movies. It felt like drowning in a very small space. On the concrete, I saw the folder man's shoes, cheap loafers. He knelt so my field of view held only his face and the great blank of the night sky behind him. Daniel, he said, and I could smell the coffee on his breath. People make mistakes. You accessed confidential material. That's a civil problem until it isn't. We need your cooperation. You stage drills, I heard myself say. My voice sounded like it belonged to a voicemail. You scared people. You locked doors. He blinked. We measured stress. We reduced theft. We improved recovery time. Most customers leave happier after an incident than before. That's the data. Government? I asked. He didn't answer. He tapped the folder instead, a small patient rhythm. We're going to take you inside to talk to someone who can process this. You'll sign a document acknowledging the sensitivity of what you saw and agreeing not to distribute it. Then you'll go home. If you don't sign, you'll be held for trespass and theft of proprietary information. Those are the paths. I already sent it, I said. It wasn't bravado. It was the only true thing I had. His jaw clicked. Behind him, in the blackened glass of the receiving bay, I saw my own shape on the ground and the carnival halo of the working lights. They took me through a door marked employees only and into a back office I'd only ever glimpsed as a customer. Flickering monitors, wire racks, the smell of paper and ammonia. An older associate I recognized from the front. I'd bought batteries from him once, stood with his hands folded, eyes on a clipboard. He couldn't meet my gaze, but he stood between me and the corridor, the way a person might stand between a neighbor's dog and the street. They slid a paper toward me. Non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement, the header said. The Walmart logo sat cheek by jowl with a seal I didn't recognize but had learned to fear in the course of an hour. The first paragraph was all consequences. The last paragraph was voluntary. My name was pre-filled, as neatly as if I'd made an appointment to be here. They gave me a pen. We'll need your password, one man said evenly. For the off-site copies. I laughed. It wasn't a brave laugh. It sounded like a bark. No. The taser dart still stuck in my shirt. The man with the loafers gestured and the older associate left and came back with a small first aid kit and a bottle of water. Someone had highlighted a section of the NDA. There's a good path here, the man said. We've identified you as a non-compliant variable. That doesn't have to be your story. Most people are compliant. You test people like they're rats, I said. You test brakes, he said softly, like he was telling me a secret. You test emergency exits. You test evacuation routes. We test people. It's responsible to know how humans actually behave where they actually are. The safest place to test is a controlled retail environment. We can make it safe. Do you want this to be safe, Daniel? His tone scared me more than the taser. I picked up the pen and wrote 2 sentences in the margin of the NDA. I didn't plan them. They came out of me the way swearing does when you drop a skillet. I read a document called Project Nexus. I am not safe. The man frowned like I'd given the wrong answer on a quiz. He slid the paper back toward me, slow as weather. Sign, he said. He didn't raise his voice. Somewhere out on the floor, the announcement came again. Severe weather warning. The world outside my chest was a script with my name worked into it. I put the pen down. I stood up. For a second, nobody moved because no one expected that I would. And in that small pocket of disbelief, I did the one reckless thing left to me. I grabbed the highlighted section and tore. It made the honest, childish sound paper makes when it gives up. Then everything sped. A chair scraped. A radio crackled. The older associate, who had never stopped being a person, reached for my arm and whispered, "Don't make it worse." And I wish I could say I listened. The second shock hit higher. The floor rushed up. My teeth clicked hard enough that I tasted copper. The last thing I saw before my vision shrank was the corner of the NDA with my name on it. The last thing I heard was the man with the folders saying, not unkindly, "Escalation complete." When I woke, I was in my car in the front row, driver's door cracked. A receipt fluttered on the passenger seat like a joke. It had no items, just a timestamp and a line at the bottom that read, "Thank you. Compliance achieved." The PDF on my phone opened to a blank gray pane. My burner email showed nothing in sent. The journalist's Substack had a new post about supply chain. My arms were striped where the darts had poked. My spine buzzed like I'd swallowed a hive. I drove home on streets that had never looked more like a set. The stoplights ticked like pulse oximeters. In my apartment, the broom handle leaned where I dropped it. The window screen lay on the gravel below. My lock had been replaced with an identical lock. A plastic bag from Walmart sat on my kitchen table, empty. I didn't put it there. This happened weeks ago, and I still don't sleep through. Every time the living room lights hiccup, I hold my breath and listen for calm voices at the door. I tell myself I've watched too many conspiracies crowd my feed. I tell myself a company wouldn't stage fear just to chart how I walk and where I look and who I obey. But on certain nights, at certain times, 2100 hours is one of them, the air changes. The phone says there's weather. I stand very still and imagine the overhead intercom. The trained, "Please remain where you are." And I think about the phrase that has replaced prayer for me. The one line I wrote on a piece of paper I didn't sign. I am not safe. I went to Target for paper towels and dog food because the office air compressor had spit powdered pumice all over my scrubs, and I wanted to feel like my apartment wasn't coated in plaque. It was one of those Phoenix afternoons when heat comes off the asphalt like a living thing. The sun was sliding down behind Camelback, cars ticking in the parking lot even after their engines died, and the automatic doors coughed me into that cold, bright red and white world that smells like detergent and gum. I do this run twice a month. Paper towels, dog food for beans, maybe candles if I'm feeling domestic. My head was full of molars and the new hygienist who never wipes the light handle. Not exactly thriller material. I was scrolling a coupon in the Target app, pushing the cart with my hip to keep momentum while my fingers searched for 5% off. I saw him first in reflection. The freezer doors in the frozen section throw back a milky, curved version of you. Pale, a little stretched. A hoodie, dark, maybe forest green, 2 aisles over, moving when I moved. I didn't think Stalker. I thought teenager with headphones, or someone looking for the same brand of chicken nuggets. Little coincidences happen in stores all the time. You make a left, someone else makes a left. But when I turned the cart without looking, just a casual pivot like I'd changed my mind, I saw it again through the glass. His body tracked me. Not perfectly, not pantomime, but the same cadence. When I paused to pretend to read ingredients, he paused. When a dad with a toddler cut across between us, hoodie repositioned so the toddler's head blocked his face. I told myself it was nothing and let the cold bite my knuckles while I pulled a bag of frozen peas for my emergency freezer dinners. I left the aisle too fast, wheels chirping. On impulse, I took a detour through makeup and then doubled back through seasonal, a sloppy S-curve no one would do if they were actually shopping. It felt silly to test a stranger like he was a rat in a maze. I caught my reflection again in the black plastic of an empty end-cap display. He was there, 2 rows over now, still matching my rhythm. When I stopped to adjust my mask, habit from work, even though I don't wear it in stores anymore, he raised a hand to his hood. He didn't pull it back. He just touched it, a neutral adjustment. It's the kind of thing you can't explain even to yourself without sounding dramatic. I stayed with normal. Normal is, walk to paper goods, load an economy pack of towels, ignore your pulse. Normal is, text Talia a photo of a candle labeled Desert Bloom. And write, does the desert bloom smell like fabric softener? Normal is, pretend this is a funny story for later. Between paper goods and pet food, the space opens up. I could see across to the entry now, to the starburst of carts and the chime of people coming and going. Hoodie never crossed the main aisle. He paralleled me, always 2 aisles to my right. When someone else stood in his line of sight, he shifted like oil avoiding water, never forward, never closer. He never picked up anything, just that pacing shadow with a hood. By the time I hit dog food, my mouth was dry and Bean's kibble bag felt like lifting a body. I looked at my phone pretending to check the list, and instead opened the target circle. Store security is buried in the app under Guest Services. I hovered, felt ridiculous, and then tapped. Hi, Guest Services, the chat bubbled. How can we help today? I typed. This is going to sound weird, but I think someone is following me. I got a generic response about alerting a team member. I put the phone face down in the cart and stood there with my hands on Bean's food like it could anchor me. Maybe 10 seconds later, a woman in a red shirt with hair braided tight into a bun appeared at the end of my aisle like a magician. You okay? She asked softly. Maybe I'm overreacting, I said, which is what women say when we're about to describe a man doing something we can't articulate into a rule he's breaking. He's wearing a dark hoodie. He hasn't done anything. He just moves when I move. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't say, we can't do anything unless. She touched a radio clipped to her belt. Stay with me, she said. We'll walk to Guest Services and check cameras. You can leave your cart. We'll grab it. I followed her like a duckling. We passed an aisle opening, and in my peripheral vision, I caught the hood, head bowed, hands in a front pocket. Not chasing, not closing, watching the way a cat watches. At Guest Services, a man with a shaved head and calm eyes took us through the swinging door into the back, where the air smelled like cardboard. He asked what I'd seen and pulled up a wall of screens. We rewound to when I walked in. There I was, on replay, tucking hair behind my ear. And there, barely a beat later, he stepped from where he'd been leaning against the dollar spot end cap and began following, not through aisles, not tailing. He flanked me, always at that same diagonal. We watched me in frozen foods. He turned when I turned. He ghosted when the dad with the toddler crossed between. We watched me fake scan ingredients and him make the nothing gesture that looked like a mirror of mine. He hasn't touched you, the guard said. A note of apology like that limited his tools. But I'll walk you out. We grabbed my cart on the way. The guard stayed 2 steps from my elbow. The woman with braids hovered behind, eyes up. Do you want us to call the police? She asked, and then answered for me. We can at least make a report. I nodded. In line, I could feel him somewhere behind, a pressure rather than a person. The guard's presence put a bubble around me, and within the bubble my heart could talk again. The world on the other side kept moving, kids whining, a man buying batteries, the beep of the scanner like a metronome. When I looked up the long red throat of checkout lanes, I didn't see him. Then security paused the footage for me. He'd scrubbed to my checkout lane while I was paying. The camera angled face down from above. There he was, not next to me, not behind. He was parked at the end cap of candy, standing in my blind spot, body angled just so. It wasn't a normal human stance. It was a geometry problem. How do you align yourself so someone can't see you without looking directly behind? He stood like that for a full 2 minutes while I fished my card out and bagged paper towels. Do you see him leave the store? I asked. Security clicked ahead. Customers left in a steady flow. There was no sign of the hood. We watched the doors. We watched the cart corral. We watched the red bullseye logo glare like a moon. No hood. Somehow he slipped out of a side door or simply melted into a herd when we weren't watching. They walked me to my car. The sun was down now and the heat had softened, but the lot held on to it like a grudge. The guard scanned Rose, his eyes flicking in a practiced pattern. I loaded Bean's food. Text someone when you get home, the woman said. She held my forearm, strong, practical, then let go. I drove a route I don't normally take, cutting down 16th Street to avoid traffic, then up Bethany home toward my complex. A beige sedan slotted in behind me at one point, then turned off. I told myself Phoenix is full of beige sedans. I told myself not to make everything about him. I told myself, like a catechism, the rules. If someone follows, don't go home, go to a police station. But I needed to pee, and Beans would be dancing at the door, and there's no police station on my way. I turned in under the saguaro silhouettes and parked beneath my bay number. I sat there a beat with the engine clicking and my hands on the wheel like I was afraid if I moved the night would notice. Inside, Beans leaped like he had springs in his joints. I clicked locks, set the deadbolt, slid the safety bar behind the front door. My Ring doorbell showed me a pink half moon of my porch and the black ribbon of the street. I fed Beans and texted Talia. Home safe. Weird man. Target security walked me out. She immediately called. File a report, she said. Even if they do nothing, it's a record. I filed the report online. There's a field called Describe the Incident. I wrote, a man mirrored my movements for approximately 30 minutes. He maintained distance and avoided direct approach. Security footage confirms. It read like I was filling out an experiment form. Under witnesses, I put target security. At 2:13 a.m., the ring chime shredded the dark. I don't sleep deeply. I'm a hygienist. I wake when a refrigerator hum sounds wrong. The chime dumped me into my body like falling downstairs. I grabbed the phone and opened the app. The night vision turned the world into a grayscale cartoon. Across the street, under the canopy of a desert willow, a figure stood with his hands in his pockets. Hood up, shoulders relaxed, facing my building. He wasn't near my door. He hadn't crossed onto the gravel. He was standing on the public side of the street, and the law, I would learn, draws lines there. I called 911 anyway. The dispatcher's voice was low and competent. I could tell she had a paper cup of coffee by the way she cleared her throat. He's standing across the street, I said. He followed me at Target earlier tonight. Security has video. Is he on your property? She asked. No. Is he attempting to gain entry? No. He's just standing. We can send a unit to patrol, she said. If he's not trespassing or engaged in a crime, they can't detain. I pressed the phone to my ear hard enough to leave a rectangle. He was close enough to breathe on me while I paid for toothpaste, I said, and immediately hated that I sounded hysterical. She was kind. She said an officer would drive by. I watched the street like a nature camera where a rare animal has wandered into frame. The hood didn't move. When the headlights swept past 20 minutes later, so slow enough to read plates, he stepped behind the desert willow's shadow, becoming a darker piece of darkness. And then when the cruiser turned the corner, he wasn't there at all. I didn't sleep after that. I lay on the floor beside the bed where I could see the bottom of the front door and the sliver of hall light like a blade on the carpet. Beans tucked against my hip, heavy as a stone. Morning made me brave. It always does. The sky went pale, the AC turned on. The delivery truck down the block made its shriek beep, and I could assemble myself into someone who knows what to do. I went outside. There was a piece of blue painter's tape stuck to the inside lip of my mailbox, folded over like a tab. If you weren't looking, you wouldn't see it. It wasn't graffiti, it wasn't a note. It was a placeholder, a mark. I peeled it off with my fingernail and felt my breakfast turn to lead. I told myself it could be anything. A maintenance guy marking which boxes needed replacement, a neighbor's kid playing with tape. I asked our property manager if maintenance had been around. She shook her head. No tape, she said, firm like a rule of God. At work the next day, someone canceled and I had an hour free. I watched the Target videos again on my phone because security had emailed me a clip for the police. The thing that stuck in my throat wasn't the hood, it was me. The shape of me, so oblivious. The trust on my face when I handed over my card. The curl of my hair I'd tucked behind my ear, a gesture he'd copied. 2 nights later, I came home after a late shift. I did everything right. I varied my route. I checked mirrors. No beige sedans. No hooded silhouettes. My complex's motion lights came on as I walked up. The porch smelled like rubber hose and oleander. I unlocked the door and something in the air inside was wrong. Not cooler, not warmer, just wrong, like a room after someone has sneezed. Beans didn't come barreling the way he normally does. He trotted out of the bedroom and sat, tail wagging carefully. He looked at me with his ears angled back, a greeting, but thoughtful. I set my bag on the counter. The bag strap brushed something that wasn't there yesterday. My fruit bowl had been turned 90 degrees. Not rocked, not rummaged, turned. The bananas faced the other way. The magnet on the side of the fridge, the one shaped like a tooth the office gave us, sat on the opposite edge from where I always keep it. Those are small things. If I came home to a couch cushion on the floor, I'd blame Beans. But fruit bowls don't rotate. Magnets don't walk. I put my palm flat on the counter like it could feel the history. I walked the apartment slow. Closet doors were shut. Windows latched. The sliding door's wooden dowel was in place. Under the bed was under the bed. Dust. A sock. The corner of a shoebox. The bathroom mirror smelled faintly of Windex and lemon the way it always did. I said out loud, to the empty, as if to a child, no. Then I turned all the way around in the kitchen and saw it. My keys, which I hook on a little nail by the door every day, were laid on the console table parallel to the edge, perfectly straight, like a ruler exercise. I don't do straight. I throw. The garage door clacked. It wasn't the opener. It was the emergency release, the hook and rope inside the door that manual opens if the power fails. Someone outside had used a coat hanger or a long loop to fish the release through the seam. There's videos online. It's easy if you know what you're doing. The metal sound pulled through the bones of the apartment, clack-thunk. Beans went from thoughtful to growl so fast he surprised himself. I moved without thinking. I grabbed Beans' leash not to leash him, but because the clasp is heavy brass, and weight in the hand felt like agency. I dialed 911 and put the phone between my ear and shoulder like a work call. I walked to the hallway where I could see both the living room and the mouth of the garage door that opens into the kitchen. 911, the operator said. "There's someone in my garage," I whispered. My mouth was too dry. The words were slow. "Are you in a safe place?" she asked. I didn't say no because I didn't know what safe meant. Distance? Thickness of door? Knowledge of the thing on the other side? I backed into the hallway and crouched, the leash looped in my fist so hard it hurt. Beans stood pressed against my leg, his heartbeat a hoof. The interior door handle didn't turn. It moved like a thought, just enough metal on metal to say, "I'm here." Then the door swung a fraction. I had forgotten to set the chain. He'd found the trick that defeats the garage. Slip the release, lift, walk under, let the door settle again. He knew how to be silent. He had mirrored me for an hour. He knew how to read tempo. The door opened 6 inches and paused. I saw the edge of fabric first, that soft dark green. A narrow slice of his face below the hood, stubbled jaw, mouth in a line like someone focusing. No nose, no eyes. That had been his whole game. Stay in the geometry where you don't show a face. "I'm on the phone with 911, I said, and I wasn't lying. The dispatcher was still in my ear saying things like, "Officers are on their way, and stay where you are." Voice a rope I could grip with a hand that had no other rope. He didn't push the door open harder. He didn't run. He did what he'd done in the store. He waited. He breathed. He matched. Something primal in me, something older than words, reached through my spine and pressed a button. I stood up. I didn't run. I stepped into view. He opened the door by the same number of inches I stepped forward. Mirror. When I raised my hand with the leash the way you test balance, he raised his right hand to his hood. It was a microsecond of something like satisfaction? I don't know. If I call it joy, I make him a person. I don't want to give him that. I broke the mirror. I lunged first. The brass clasp at the end of the leash is meant to click to a metal ring. It also catches skin. It also breaks soft tissue when you put your whole body behind it. I aimed for his throat and hit his cheekbone, the impact ringing up my arm like a struck pipe. He grunted, not a movie sound, an involuntary air slither, and stepped back. The door swung wider. He was taller than me by a head. His shoulders under the hoodie were narrower than I'd made them in my fear. His hands were bare. He came forward then because we were out of his rules. His hand shot out, not for me, for the leash. He grabbed the strap and yanked. The world narrowed to friction, leather burning my palm, Beans barking a sound he didn't know he had. I let the leash go because the only thing the leash wanted was to be a story about who owned it. He stumbled a half step with the force he'd applied, and that's when I shoved the door with my shoulder so it bounced off his knee. He made another involuntary sound, higher. I could have run out the front. I could have gone to a neighbor, hammered on doors. I went the other way because fear and habit are cousins. I went to the garage, to the car. I hit the fob with my thumb, and the Corolla blinked awake. The garage door was down, but not locked. He'd lifted it just enough to slip under. A sliver of dawn air sliced along the bottom. I threw myself into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed. The cabin filled with the smell of hot dust and old coffee. He appeared at the passenger window and did not smash it. He leaned in, hands on the glass, and watched me. He wanted me to feel him watching me. The thing about fear is sometimes it points. It pointed at the button. I hit the garage door opener and the door stuttered against the thrown manual release, struggled, and then jerked up a foot. 2, 3. He realized then what I was going to do. He moved to the front of the car, raising his hands not to push me back, but to continue that awful game of mirroring. If I go forward, you go forward. Some demonstration that he controlled the frame. I put the car in drive and did something I had only ever done in my head. I stepped on the gas. The bumper met his legs at walking speed, not fast enough to break anything big, fast enough to take him off his feet. He banged onto the hood and rolled off into I don't even know. Air, floor, the bottom of my field of vision. The car nose hit the moving garage door. The door popped higher on its rails with a grinding scream, and I went under, dragging a rubber lip, into the early morning. I didn't look back. I didn't wait for the patrol car 6 blocks away. I drove to the bright gas station on 7th Street that never closes and parked under a camera pointed like a lighthouse. I locked the doors and called 911 again, and this time the words came out of me not like an apology, but like inventory. He entered my garage. I engaged. I left. I am at the Chevron at 7th and Missouri. I am in a silver Corolla. I am in shock, but not injured. They came. They wanted me to go back. I said I would, but not alone. We drove in a little parade. Cruiser, me, cruiser. The garage door hung crooked like a broken tooth. There was a smear on the cement that could have been a scuff, could have been blood. No one was in my apartment. The chain hung loose like a thought realized too late. A detective asked me if I could describe his face. I said no, because he'd practiced not giving me one. He had given me gestures, angles, intervals, breath. They took photos of the painter's tape from my trash when I told them about it. They dusted for prints and got a bouquet of the hundreds of hands that had ever touched my doorknob. They told me there had been other reports of people standing across streets and not trespassing. They told me if they found him I would know. They meant, probably not. They meant, sometimes there is no satisfying end. After, I lay on my living room floor in the rectangle of light from the sliding door and taught Beans to put his paw on my chest because the weight helped. I replaced the garage door opener with a model that can't be tripped by a hanger. I put a metal bracket in the track. I stuck a broom handle in the slider higher, at a height you have to know to reach. I learned to clock the geometry of rooms the way he had. For weeks, I turned my fruit bowl a 1/4 inch every morning to check if it had spun without me. This is the part one can't decide whether to tell. 2 Saturdays later, I went to a different target in a different part of town because you can't cede territory forever. A couple with a baby in a sling walked too close and I flinched, and then I forced myself to let the flinch happen and keep moving. In the checkout line, I felt that pressure again in my back, that sense of being included in someone else's plan. I looked up at the candy end cap. A young guy in a ball cap stood there flipping a pack of gum from one hand to the other, bored. He met my eyes and looked away. No hood, no performance. It wasn't him. I paid, I bagged, I left. Back in the car, I put my hands on the wheel and looked at them the way I'd looked at the keys arranged on my console table, parallel and 2 straight. I had mirrored him in the garage, and it saved me, and it took something too. He had drawn a frame around my days, and I had learned to live inside it. Some nights the ring chimes, and it's a cat. Some nights it chimes, and it's wind. Once more it chimed at 2:14 a.m. I opened the app, and the porch was empty. Across the street, the desert willow rippled, and the shadow under it didn't. I watched for a long time, and nothing moved at all. I went to the hallway, crouched with Beans pressed against me, leash coiled in my fist, and I waited for a breath I didn't want to match. My name is Ryan Collins, 32, assistant night manager at a supermarket off in East Sandy in Portland. In March 2020, my world shrank to 4 things: masks, sanitizer, angry customers, and the aisle we called gold, paper goods. I used to obsess over in-cap displays and shrink reports. Suddenly, I was refereeing arguments about the last 4-pack of 2-ply. I slept days, ate in my car, and kept a spare mask in my glove box like a saint's medal. The night it started, the store smelled like bleach and cardboard. We just taped new one-way arrows on the floor and put up limits, 1 pack per household. I was scanning in a late pallet of paper towels when they walked in, 6 of them, wearing our Chains navy polos, reflective vests, and the exact gray masks we'd just issued. Each had a scanner, a clipped badge with the orange swoosh logo, and the kind of energy that says show me the mess, and I'll make it disappear. Corporate Night Task Force, the woman in front said, flashing her badge. We're here to help with throughput. I didn't argue. Corporate had been firing off emails like flares. It wasn't impossible they'd send help. The woman's name tag said Harper. Her eyes were pale and steady. The others fanned out without waiting for me. One cracked open a carton knife and cut plastic on a pallet with surgeon neatness. Another was already reprinting shelf tags at the little kiosk I kept locked. Except it wasn't locked. My key was still in my pocket, and the kiosk was open. I told myself I'd forgotten to lock it. I told myself a lot of things. They were good. That's what made it hard to see. They answered questions, directed traffic, wiped down handles without being asked. A teenage boy in a beanie tried to grab 3 packs at once, and the guy with the buzz cut didn't bark at him. He just said, "We're all in this together, man." And the kid left with 1 and even thanked him. Their scanners beeped in a rhythm that felt professional, almost soothing. I recognized the codes. SPO for special order, RTV for return to vendor. They did a ton of RTVs, too many for a night when my backroom was basically empty. When I asked, Harper smiled through her mask and said, "We're clearing ghost inventory, so you stop getting yelled at for items that don't exist." I wanted that to be true so badly I let it be true. Around 2 a.m., they reset the paper goods aisle. It looked like a magazine spread when they were done. Faced product, perfect spacing, limits posted cleanly, no crooked sign corners. They even rotated the heavy bulk packs to make them easier on backs. Customers trickled out, the store got quiet, and the task force kept moving, reorganizing adjacent aisles, correcting planogram violations I hadn't noticed. They were better at my job than me. By 4, I realized I hadn't seen any new paper goods hit the floor. The beautiful reset was done entirely by thinning what was there. The pallets I'd scanned were gone from staging, but I couldn't remember anyone wheeling them out. I went to the dock. The exterior door was closed. The seal light was green. The camera's little red light was blinking, but when I hit playback, the screen flashed playback disabled by admin. I'd never seen that. Which admin? I texted my store manager, Dan. No read. 2 dots appeared and vanished. It was always like this now. Everyone was always almost answering. At 4:20 a.m., Harper came to the office to sign my nightly compliance sheet. She used my pen without touching it with her hand. She pinched it with a loop of disinfectant wipe like a surgeon handles a contaminated tool. She signed in neat block letters and left a note at the bottom. We moved the side stack in 12A to conform with cap map. "You're welcome." Smiley face. I watched them leave at 5:10 with our usual third-party bread vendor. He came early because his route changed. That part was normal. What wasn't normal was the way the task force shepherded 4 wrapped pallets onto his truck. RTVs, they said. I didn't sign anything. The bread guy kissed 2 fingers and tapped the air. "Stay healthy, man." The dock seal went red. Their scanners went quiet. I told myself bread vendors sometimes took consolidated returns. I told myself I'd email the morning. I told myself I'd slept too little. At 9 that morning, Dan called. "Great job on the reset," he said. "Corporate's happy. You were one of the only stores that didn't get a complaint between midnight and 6. "Who sent the task force?" I asked. There was a pause and the fuzzy hum of his home internet. "What task force?" I laughed, and then I didn't. "We don't have a task force," he said. "We barely have payroll. Did you hire temps?" "They had badges," I said, and immediately heard how thin it sounded. When I got back that night, the paper aisle was a photograph of absence. Not just low gone. Every facing of toilet paper and paper towels replaced with a neat, repeating line of tissue boxes like a theater backdrop pretending to be stock. The locked steel cage in the back, where we kept reserve paper packs, had been cleaned, swept, labeled. Empty. Someone had even given the floor a mop's worth of attention. The emptiness looked respectful. I pulled access logs. The entries were clean. My code in, my code out. The bread vendor, our overnight clerk. No one else. No sign of a 6-person team that had both reorganized my store and excised a high theft department with no mess, no shouting, no waste. The camera files came back online sometime after 9. Nothing on them but a time lapse of produce misting. I sent an incident report. Corporate wrote back with a gentle paragraph about stress and perception during a crisis and a link to our employee assistance program. I almost threw my phone at the break room microwave. The second escalation didn't happen at my store. 2 weeks later, I stopped by a different location off 82nd to borrow a pallet jack because our handle had snapped. Their assistant manager, Vaishali, a woman who ran circles around me, said, "You get the corporate angels yet?" What? Those uniformed saints? They turned my frozen section into Disneyland. She laughed, then leaned close. They also walked 4 pallets out, backstock I'd never even seen. When I went to pull the camera footage, guess what? Playback disabled by admin. I didn't report it. What am I going to say? Hi. Send more people who make my shrink look good? Hearing it out loud should have made me feel less crazy. It didn't. It made me realize we weren't dealing with a one-off. We were a test run. I started paying attention. The store down by the river had a perfect end cap composed of nothing but "sorry, temporarily out" tags. The one off Alberta had brand new shelf strips that were cleaner than corporate scent, printed in a font just a hair too crisp. A driver with a rented box truck waved to me from our dock one morning with the comfortable nod you give a coworker. I'd never seen him before. His plate was temporary. His truck was immaculate. I told Dan again. He told me to forget it, to stop reading Reddit, to stop drinking coffee after 2 p.m. I tried. I woke up at noon to my phone pinging. A WhatsApp message to the store number we used for vendor overflow. From an unsaved contact. "We'll be back tonight to fix the thing in 12A. Keep doing what you're doing. You're good at it." I do not give the store number to anyone. It lives on a laminated card by the manager desk. The message evaporated when I tried to screenshot it. Breaking point came on a Tuesday when the rain was a white noise machine over the roof. Harsh fluorescent noon in the dead of night. The team arrived, smaller this time. For people, no Harper. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't need me. They moved straight to paper goods with a confidence that felt like ownership. I followed them. I intended to ask for paperwork. I intended to be the manager I pretended to be in emails. "Can I see your work order?" I said. The tall man with the buzz cut didn't look up from his scanner. "You can see our results," he said mildly. "That's not how any of this works," I said, trying to smile like we were colleagues. "We sign RTVs. We request resets. We don't." He tapped the side of his scanner and my kiosk logged out. The little green light went red. He hadn't touched it. "Please don't touch my systems," I said, too loud, and customers 5 aisles over turned their heads. The buzz-cut man smiled behind his mask, and my brain showed me 2 images at once. Him pinning down a carton with easy strength and his hand on my wrist. "I need to see your badge," I said. Harper wasn't there to smile at me. No one was, so the tall man sighed and unclipped his ID. It was perfect. The swoosh, his name, Mason, even the microprint on the hologram. But the issue date in tiny gray letters said April 16th, 2024. My heart lurched. It was 2020. I looked up. He knew I'd seen it. He didn't correct it, didn't get flustered. He clipped the badge back and moved the conversation sideways. "We're almost done," he said. "We'll be out of your way. You'll get a thank you email." I walked toward the dock. My breath fogged inside my mask. The bread vendor's truck was there again. We hadn't had bread delivered at night since the new route started. The dock light was red. The camera light blinked like a slow heartbeat. I keyed in the door code, and it chirped wrong code. I re-entered it. Wrong again. Then it chirped accepted, and I knew I hadn't hit the last digit yet. On the dock, shrink-wrapped pallets waited like silent passengers. Not just paper, cleaning supplies, bleach tablets, disinfectant wipes. I scanned the labels. Every one an RTV to a vendor I didn't recognize. Halu Supply Incorporated. I took a picture. My camera app winked and closed. I picked up the corded dock phone and dialed Dan. Straight to voicemail. I hung up and dialed 911, then panicked and didn't hit call. What was I going to say? People who make my store look good are stealing politely? I felt like a kid reporting a ghost, and worse, I knew these weren't ghosts. I went back in. My overnight clerk, Jorge, was restocking yogurt. Those corporate people aren't corporate, I said. He shrugged. They're better than corporate. They wiped down the carts. They're stealing, I said. So is everyone, he said, and handed me a mask because mine was damp. I walked up to Mason. You need to leave, I said, and I heard how small I sounded. He glanced at Harper's absence like it was an opening, and then at me. Do you want a clipboard, Ryan? He said gently. Would that help you feel in control? He knew my name. It was on my badge, sure, but he said it exactly the way Dan said it when I'd messed up receiving. He sounded like a co-worker who'd seen me every day for years. I'm calling the police, I said, and my hand didn't move toward my phone because he had already placed a sanitized wipe on the screen like a napkin over a glass. We're replacing chaos with continuity, he said. You'll get credit. You like credit. I stepped in front of his cart. He stepped past me, a curve around a rock in a stream. I put my hand on the handle. He stopped then, and something changed, an invisible lowering of temperature. He looked at my hand like it was a piece of equipment that had to be moved carefully. Ryan, he said, don't mistake consent for invisibility. I did not consent, I said, and my voice cracked. Not you, he said. Them. He nodded toward the empty aisle, the signs, the taped arrows. They consented to a story about order. We're just giving it to them. It happened fast after that. 2 of them moved with the speed of people who run drills. My elbow was guided, not wrenched, not hurt, into a coil of pallet wrap, the plastic cold and crinkling. The sound was bright and embarrassing. They taped me to a support post in the stockroom, while Mason talked about shrink targets in a voice you might use to calm a panicked dog. My face mask mashed into my nose. I could smell citrus cleaner and my own sweat. The wrap tightened across my chest, and I thought of my lungs, of headlines, of ventilators. I tried to call out. Jorge had the radio on. Somebody's Bluetooth speaker was playing an old playlist packed with 2010s pop, cheerful and thin. I could hear the dock door roll, the thud of pallet jacks, the soft susurration of product leaving. 10 minutes, Mason said. Then we'll cut you out. You'll have a great story. Don't waste it. One of them lifted my hand and placed something in it. A folded sheet of paper from our own shelf tag printer. On it was a cap map of the paper aisle annotated in tiny, neat handwriting. In the corner, my name was printed in my own label font. Collins, Ryan. Under it, a second line, variable, reliable. He looked at my eyes like he was checking a temperature. You're good at your job, he said. Don't let the wrong people notice. They left me there. They did cut me out, like he said. One clean vertical slice with the carton knife, a pat on the shoulder like we'd done a hard move together. My skin buzzed under the leftover static of the wrap. I didn't chase them. I went to the bathroom and washed my hands until my knuckles burned, and then I laughed. Because what else was I going to wash off? Dan didn't believe me in a way that was worse than disbelief. He empathized. He asked if I needed time off. He sent the EAP link again. I deleted the link and pretended it felt like control. Weeks passed. Paper goods came back slowly, then vanished again, like a tide with its own calendar. Customers were kinder, then meaner, then apologetic. The team didn't return to my store, or if they did, they made it feel like my idea. I saw Mason again in June, in produce, comparing apples like a normal person who might complain about bruises. He wore a different mask, no vest, a green jacket that could have been from anywhere. He looked at me the way you look at a neighbor on a walk. Recognition, not intimacy. He let me see him, and that scared me more than the night he'd wrapped me. It meant the game wasn't secrecy. It was normalization. I followed him at a distance, past the seasonal aisle, past a cardboard 4th of July display nobody would gather for. He didn't look back. He bought 2 apples and a 6-pack of toilet paper that had finally, tenuously, returned. He paid with tap. His phone flashed the same kind of badge you use for transit. At the door, he paused just long enough for me to think he'd wait. He didn't. He left into a gray drizzle that made the parking lot smell like hot tar and wet cardboard. I went home after my shift in that peculiar daylight that never feels like morning when you're coming off nights. My apartment was on the 2nd floor of a 3-story building that had been repainted in 2004 and hadn't been touched since. I opened my door and stood too long in the frame because something was wrong and my brain wanted it to be nothing. It was all cleaner than I'd left it. Not just wiped, aligned. The shoes by my mat sat heel to toe in a neat line. The stack of mail I'd been ignoring was squared to the edge of the counter. The dish rack held plates like soldiers. My couch, which had always lived at a slight angle, now sat parallel to the wall like a diagram. I did the stupid thing people do in movies and said, "Hello," because I needed the courage of my own voice. The only answer was the bathroom fan. I went room to room, and the dread didn't spike, it deepened. Nothing was missing. Everything was optimized. My pantry labels were reprinted in that too crisp font. The shelf heights in my linen closet had been adjusted to fit the tallest item flush, which meant someone had unscrewed and moved supports. Under my bed, the dust was gone. On my coffee table sat my manager badge. Next to it, a roll of pallet wrap and a black Sharpie. On the TV, a paused frame. Grainy footage of me from my own building's hallway camera, carrying a box of masks in late March. The timestamp, the week I'd started nights. The cursor drifted on the screen as if someone had recently set down the remote. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You tell better stories when you've seen the ending. I didn't respond. My palm left sweat on the phone case. I picked up the pallet wrap. It stuck to itself with a familiar whisper. I imagined the plastic tightening over my chest in my own living room, the polite efficiency of hands that didn't shake. I pictured a training exercise where the variable is a person, and the person is me, and success is measured in how little needs to be taken to make the world feel different. The apartment door eased open without the deadbolt. I hadn't locked it. A person stepped in and closed it behind them without looking at me. Not Mason, a woman in a navy polo, hair tucked up, a mask with a thin seam. She carried a small toolkit and a clipboard. She didn't flinch at the sight of me the way a burglar would. She looked at me the way a coworker looks at someone on their break. "Harper," I said, because I wanted her to correct me and say that wasn't her name, wanted some part of my memory to be wrong. She set the toolkit on my table, opened it, and pulled out a small level, a label maker, a packet of furniture sliders. "We're going to fix your couch," she said. "And your fear." I moved, and she moved faster. The pallet wrap whispered. It wasn't rough, but it was final. The smell of plastic and Sharpie filled my mouth. She spoke in the tone I use for anxious customers. "We'll be quick. We'll be careful. You'll be okay." My chair scraped the floor as they shifted it exactly parallel to the rug. My heart hammered, and the wrap pressed it back down, an artificial calm. "Why?" I asked through the mask. The word came out damp and small. "Because chaos is contagious," she said, and drew a perfectly straight line with the marker on the wrap across my chest, as if marking a cut point for later. They worked while I watched. Two more I hadn't heard enter, gliding around me like I was a column. They didn't rifle drawers. They didn't pocket anything. They taped down the corner of a rug I always tripped on. They tightened the screws on the loose cabinet. They turned my knives so the blades faced one way. They put my badge on top of a folded towel with my name label facing up. They weren't stealing. They were rehearsing. When they were done, Harper, if that was her, stood in front of me with the gentle satisfaction of someone completing a checklist. She lifted her mask a fraction, and I saw the ghost of a smile that never reached her eyes. "You'll sleep better," she said. "You'll tell this as a robbery." "It isn't. It's a calibration." "What are you practicing for?" I asked. She tipped her head. "We already practiced," she said. "You're the proof." She nodded toward the TV. The hallway footage resumed and showed me that week in March, fumbling my keys, masking my face, stepping into a different life. We're not the only ones who learned efficiency. They left me wrapped to the chair with a pair of scissors placed exactly within toe reach, as if kindness could be measured in inches. The door clicked. The bathroom fan kept purring. I could hear my upstairs neighbor coughing, the muffled sound of a shower running. I watched the level they'd left on my shelf, and the bubble was perfect. I don't know how long I sat there. I know when I finally cut myself loose, the lines the Sharpa left on the plastic mapped a grid across my skin that took days to fade. I put the couch back at its old angle, and then, hours later, I moved it to match their straightness because the crookedness made me feel like I was inviting them back. I slept with the pallet wrap roll on the floor by my bed like a talisman. At work, people still asked for toilet paper with apology and anger in equal measure. Sometimes I gave them an extra pack and told myself it was compassion and not fear. The cameras never glitched again. The dock light stayed green, and then red, and then green. Every so often, a new shelf strip appeared, wider than ours. words a little too crisp. I stopped asking who printed them. When I walk my aisle now, I can feel the grid overlaying everything, the way a line snaps straight on a computer screen. I breathe in the bleach and the cardboard and the citrus cleaner, and sometimes I can smell plastic phantom tight over my ribs. At night, I dream of being reorganized, my bones labeled, my thoughts faced out, my life turned parallel to a wall I didn't choose. If you ask me what they took, I can list items. But the thing missing is the gap between my hand and the handle of a cart, the space where you decide how to move. They shrank it to zero. They left everything where it belongs. I used to think aisle numbers meant nothing, just metal signs you ignore until someone asks where the evaporated milk lies. I've stocked aisle 14 at the Discount Mart on 21st Street in Tulsa long enough to know it by muscle memory. Soup's left, broth's right, ramen at knee level. At night the store softens, fluorescent hum like a tired bee, music low enough that I can hear the wheels of my U-boat cart complaining. Regulars drift through even past midnight. Nurses after shift, people from the all-night gym, an older man who liked to read ingredient lists like they were poetry. That night, the wind bullied the automatic doors. I clocked in at 10:56 p.m., signed the freezer temp log, and pulled a pallet wrapped in plastic toward 14. It was a Tuesday into Wednesday, quiet, rain beginning, my brain already tallying bills. Dale, our night manager, did his usual pep talk through the radios clipped to our collars. Team, we're on a freight push. Let's keep the aisles clean, optics strong. He liked that word, optics, like we were a TV studio instead of a store whose mop sink burped up a smell you could taste. The older man came in around 11:30. I noticed because he always wore the same faded OU cap, and because he always asked me where we kept the low-sodium chicken broth even though I told him every time. He had a good OL boy smile, a careful way of moving, like his joints owed him money. I'd helped him reach a box of crackers he said his wife could chew easier. "You're a peach, Mariah," he said, reading my name badge. "Don't ever leave us." "I won't," I told him, like I controlled rent and car notes and the way Tulsa squeezes you when you try to get ahead. It happened at 12:13 a.m. I know the time because my scanner freezes it when I stop mid-scan. He was 2 shelves down from me on the soup end cap, one hand braced on his cart, the other pressed to his chest as if smoothing a wrinkle. Then his knees just gave. He folded into himself, body bumping the cart. A single can of cream of mushroom rolled under a rack and disappeared like it had someplace to be. "Sir," I was already moving, dropping my box cutter. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes were open, not seeing. There was a sound, a wet inhale that made my scalp tighten. "Britt," I shouted to the next aisle. "Get Dale. Call 911. Britt peered around the shelves, eyes wide, then thumbed her radio. Dale? We got a medical thing. Aisle 14. I pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck the way my mom taught me when she had her scared 10 years back. Maybe I imagined a pulse. I didn't know if I was doing it right. I kept saying "sir," like a key that could turn the lock of that moment and undo it. Dale arrived at a jog that collapsed into measured steps. He had the manager's stance, hands on belt, jaw doing math. He looked at the man, at me, at the wide aisle, at the camera bubble up in the ceiling. "Okay," he said, "let's keep this contained." He clicked his radio. "All team, code yellow on 14. Guests, reroute to 15 if possible. Spill cones, tarp now." "Shouldn't we call Mariah?" he said, soft like a scold. "We follow protocol. I'm on with corporate HR. There's liability, you understand? We don't know if he's what he is. We can't announce a death. We can't have guests filming." "He's not filming," I said, because I couldn't say he's dying. Britt returned with a gray tarp we usually throw over broken pallets. Another coworker, Jace, arrived with cones that said wet floor and a roll of caution tape. Dale kept his voice low. "We'll cover for privacy. We'll create a safety perimeter. No phones. No one calls anything except me. I'm on the phone now." I looked at his hands. He wasn't. "Dale," I said, "it's 911. He stared at me like I was a child about to run into a street. "You want a lawsuit? You want a headline about our store mishandling a situation?" We wait for the incident team. "Optics okay? Keep customers calm." We slid the tarp over the man. Careful, the air catching under the plastic like a sigh before it settled. One of his shoes stuck out, a white Velcro sneaker with the toes scuffed gray. Britt put a cone near his foot like it could protect him. Jace taped a fluttering triangle of yellow across one end of the aisle. People still drifted through, pushing carts slower, eyes skittering. Somewhere a toddler laughed at a display of cereal with a cartoon tiger. The music played an upbeat old song. My radio hissed. Dale, now actually on the phone, whispered phrases, on site, containment, media risk, hold on 911 for now. He told us, individually, to keep working. The best thing for him is stability, he said. The best thing for us is order. I tried to stalk. My hands didn't work. The scanner beeped wrong each time I aimed. The grammar of the aisle shifted. Every can felt like an accusation. I kept glancing at his shoe. At 12:26, a phone buzzed from under the tarp. The sound was both normal and obscene. I bent, hesitated, lifted the edge just enough. He had a flip phone, cracked, screen lit with a name. Lisa. The call stopped. Then a text. Where are you? He has someone, I said. She's looking for him. Do not touch his personal effects, Dale said. Chain of custody. We don't disturb anything. Optics. I went to the break room to breathe. The vending machine rattled its fluorescent cage. Work chat, our corporate app, had a red dot. Dale had posted, Team, respect privacy. No recording. Stick to task. Aisle 14 under safety hold. Any inquiries, direct to management. The thread filled with little thumbs up emojis like someone had died and we were sending sympathy. I splashed water on my face and came back. It was 12:42. He hadn't moved. Of course he hadn't. Jace joked too loud about the Cowboys' chances. Britt kept her eyes on her shelf labels like eye contact with the world might break her. A couple, holding hands, stepped around the cones and squeezed by like we'd set up a detour around a floor repair. Sorry. The woman mouthed to me, as if they were in my way. The smell started as something you could ignore. The AC kicked on and made it sharper. Everything in me wanted to drag the tarp off and start chest compressions, even if it was too late, even if I did it wrong, just to make not doing something stop. Dale leaned on the end cap with his clipboard. Corporate is mobilizing, he said. We'll have guidance. Nobody panic. We respect the deceased if he's deceased. We don't declare. What if he's not? I asked. He looked at me over the top of the clipboard. His eyes were the kind of tired that calcifies into policy. It's been 30 minutes. The phone buzzed again at 12:51. Lisa, answer me. Then, a minute later, call me back now. I was thinking of my mother, of the night we left the ER with a paper bracelet still warm on her wrist, and how the nurse had told me to watch for the smallest changes. If someone had told me to wait for optics, I would have set their hair on fire. I found Britt by the end cap, pretending to face the ramen. I can't, she said without me speaking. I need this job. I'm calling, I said. Use the back hall, she whispered. Camera blind spot by the mop closet. The call connected on the second ring. The dispatcher's voice was so square it was a relief. I gave the store address, the aisle number, the fact that I was not a nurse, the time it had been. I didn't say we had covered him, or that the manager had told us not to call. I said, please come. Stay with him, the dispatcher said. If it's safe, begin CPR. I looked at Dale at the end of the aisle, at the camera bubble, at the way even the lights seemed like witnesses we couldn't trust. I'll try, I said. She told me help was on the way. At 1:07, Dale cornered me at the top of 14. You made a phone call, he said. His voice tried to be calm and landed in dangerous. I told you we had a plan. I called for help, I said. You didn't. He took a breath through his nose. Incident team is en route. Paramedics create a scene. They shut us down. We could lose our whole night. We could lose our jobs. There's a person on the floor, I said. He has a name. He has someone calling him. Mariah, he said, and reached for my radio, as if taking it would contain me. I pulled back hard enough that the cord snagged and bit my neck. His hand hovered in the space where my throat had been. For a second, neither of us breathed. Then the front doors whooshed. 2 EMTs came in with a gurney and a third with a blue bag that says what it is without saying it. Britt had her hands to her mouth. Jace disappeared down chips and pretended to be busy. The EMTs moved with a speed that made me feel like I'd been underwater. Dale stepped forward, palms up. We have a plan, he said. We're waiting for our team. We can escort you. If you obstruct, we call the police, the first EMT said. Where? I pointed. We walked together, their gurney wheels squeaking, the tarp a dull hill in the aisle. They lifted it. One EMT touched the man's neck, pressed fingers under the jaw, shook his head once. They cut the shirt anyway, did things they had to do so they could live with it. An AED pad slapped skin. The machine's voice announced what it found. No shock advised. The phone buzzed again at 1:14. The EMT glanced at me. "Can you answer that?" he asked. "We may need a name." I nodded and flipped the phone open with hands that didn't feel like mine. "Hello, Dad." A woman's voice. Older than me, younger than my mother. Tired with panic. "Daddy, where are you?" "I'm outside." They said he was shopping. "I'm in the lot." "You're not picking up, hello?" "I'm Mariah," I said. "I work at the store." I'm with him." "Where are you exactly?" "In the parking lot," she said. "I've called 3 times. They keep transferring me." "Is he okay?" I looked at the EMTs, at the comm they put on like gear. "We're trying to help him," I said. "Come to the front doors." Her shoes made sharp sounds on tile before the words finished. She appeared at the end of the aisle, hair wet from the rain that had finally started. When she saw the tarp half lifted and strangers bent over the shape beneath, the sound she made scratched pain off my bones. She tried to run, and I caught her waist on instinct, like I was grabbing a bucket before it fell. "Wait," I said. "There." "What did you do?" she screamed. "What did you do?" Not at me, but it went through me anyway. The EMT said the thing. The other EMT lowered the tarp like a curtain. The music kept playing. Dale stumbled over a sentence about privacy. The woman, Lisa, pressed her fist to her mouth and bent without falling, a kind of broken bow. "He called me at 11. She said to no one, to everyone. He said he was grabbing soup. He'd be home before midnight." She pointed at the phone still in my hand, its case taped at the hinge. I called and called. I helped her to a chair we dragged from the pharmacy. She was shaking the way Oklahoma shakes in spring, all stored energy coming loose. She kept saying, "It was 20 minutes. We're 5 minutes away," as if the math could bully time into obedience. We were told to go back to work. Not right then, but soon enough it felt like cruelty. The cones stayed. The yellow tape fluttered like a lazy flag. I stocked beef broth into holes that opened their mouths and waited. The smell got worse as the AC cycled. Dale took Lisa to the office. I heard voices through the thin door. He was attended, he was saying. We acted quickly. We were in contact. I imagined the log he was writing, how neat the times would look when he backfilled them. At 2:05, the incident team finally arrived. 2 people in polo shirts with badges that weren't law and laminated cards on lanyards. They shook hands with Dale and used phrases like messaging and stakeholder and mitigate. One of them asked where our cameras were. The other asked me to write a statement. "Just your recollection," she said, friendly as a bank commercial. "Don't worry about times." I looked at the phone log still open on the flip phone. I looked at my scanner freezing 12:13 a.m. on its little green screen. I wrote the times. They suspended me the next day. "You violated protocol," Dale said in the small office that smelled like burnt coffee. "You escalated a situation." He couldn't look me in the eye. Someone from HR on speakerphone said the phrase administrative leave like it was a pillow. I packed my locker into a tote and left past a new display of chips. 2 for $5. It felt insane that chips could still be chips. A week later, a man in a shirt with his name stitched on like he fixed things came to my apartment. He was a lawyer. "His daughter is bringing a suit," he said. "She says you were the one who called. She asked me to tell you thank you and to ask if you still have your phone records." They wanted my texts with Brit, a screenshot of the work chat thread with the red dot, the minute my call connected with 911. They wanted the part of my life I had to offer, proof that I had refused to keep walking. I gave it. The lawyer's hands shook when he wrote down the timestamps. "This happens," he said, not as comfort, but as diagnosis. "It shouldn't, but it does." I went back to the store once. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove that the world had kept its shape without me. It had. Someone had faced the soup labels so straight they looked like a photograph. The aisle smelled like cardboard and cumin. A cutout chef on a display grinned and offered a recipe for cozy night chicken. The wet floor cones were back near the mop sink. Innocent props again. I stood where the tarp had been and listened to the wheels of a cart squeak down the tile, the same rhythm as the gurney. I thought about how fast we had all agreed to pretend. I thought about the way my name sounded in Dale's mouth when he said it like a problem, and in Lisa's when she said it like a handhold. I thought about the fact that I had worked here for 7 years and had never noticed how high the ceiling was. Sometimes at night, I wake with the music from that shift playing in my head. OSHA pop through the ceiling speakers, and I can smell the sharp sweetness of soup powder and hear a phone buzzing under plastic. In my dream, I keep almost answering it. I keep almost calling. My hands hover over the keypad, and I think about optics, about how a word can be a fence if you let it. Then the dream goes quiet, the way a store goes at 3 a.m., and I feel the wheel of a gurney hit the grout line at the end of aisle 14. That small bump, that metallic squeak, the sound of a life leaving under fluorescent lights while we keep the shelves neat. I don't know if calling at 12:13 would have saved him. I don't let myself write that sentence all the way to the period. But I know what it felt like when Lisa walked through the doors at 1:14, the rain on her jacket, the way she looked down and didn't look up again for a long time. I know how it felt when Dale put his hand toward my radio, and I pulled away, and we both understood, finally, what kind of place we were in. Tulsa is small when you live in it long enough. I see Lisa's tin Camry sometimes, or I think I do, and my breath hitches. I shop somewhere else now. It takes longer to find things. I start at the back and work toward the front, like I'm trying to walk out of a story. When I pass aisle markers, I read them out loud in my head as if I'm learning a new language. Cereal, pet, paper, soup. Aisle 14. I don't go down it. I don't need anything there. I have enough of it at home. The beeping of a scanner frozen on a time. The taste of air conditioning and nerves. The way a tarp will lift with the sound of a held breath and fall back into place because we told it to. They always tell you Salem sells fear by the pound, but fear is hard to ring up. I'm Danny Hart, 29, assistant manager at a mid-range clothing store tucked between a candle shop and a taro place that smells like licorice and dust. Tourists come in October to buy witch hats and ironic capes. The rest of the year, it's locals who need slacks for interviews and parents pleading with teens about school dress codes. I know every stain on the break room microwave and the exact pitch the front door chime hits when the batteries in the sensor start to fade. The mirrors used to be my favorite part, clean rectangles that made our cramped fitting rooms look larger. You polish a mirror right, and it's like you opened a window. That was before the first complaint. A woman in a cranberry raincoat came to the counter with a pair of jeans folded into a precise square. "It fit in the mirror," she said, "but it doesn't fit in here." She patted her own hip, baffled and irritated, and I rehearsed the usual. Mirrors don't change sizes, denim does. Try different lighting, different cut. She didn't want a speech. She wanted me to look at her phone. The video showed her standing in our dressing room, turning at the hip, expression tight the way people get when they're watching themselves for flaws. In the mirror, her reflection zipped a size 6. In the video frame, her actual body, she couldn't get it past her thigh. It was like it was giving me what I wanted to see, she said. She didn't ask for a manager because I was already one. I refunded the jeans and told myself the camera angle was playing tricks. 2 days later, a teen insisted the mirror made her acne disappear. She cried when she stepped out, and her skin was her skin again. Then a man swore his reflection blinked after him. Blinked. I wrote an incident report that read like a comedy script and sent it to corporate because that's what you do when someone says something that could go viral. We checked the bulbs. We replaced the bulbs. We tightened brackets, leveled frames, removed fingerprints with vinegar and lint-free cloths. The store was an eye exam. Better one, better two, switching fixtures on and off. The mirror in dressing room 3 was the favorite to blame. I stood in that room for 10 minutes making faces at myself, noting the harsh track lighting and the too warm LED strip around the glass. I looked pale and over-caffeinated, but I didn't look out of sync. Maybe it's just Salem, my cashier Liv said. She was 22, from Lynn, and hated the tourists enough to hide in receiving when bachelorette parties came in. People come here prepared to see something. Prepared or not, it kept happening. A regular named Mrs. Alvarez refused to try on anything alone. She said the mirror showed her with gray hair, even though her roots were an impossible espresso. "Maybe you're due to touch up," I teased without thinking. She didn't laugh. "I'm due next week," she said flatly, and left without buying the cardigan she loved last month. Corporate sent a regional safety rep who walked the floor with a laser level and a clipboard. He took light measurements and murmured about perceptual mismatch and angle-induced distortion. He wrote a memo about paint color and recommended a cooler bulb. He didn't look in a mirror for more than a second. We swapped the paint, swapped the bulbs, swapped the cleaning solution. A contractor checked the wall to make sure the frames weren't flexing. The contractor was the first one who came out shaking. "That thing smiled before I did," he said, trying to make it a joke and failing. We paid his invoice and he didn't come back. I started seeing it myself. Tiny things I could explain until I couldn't. A lag, barely a breath, between my blink and the blink in glass. The part in my hair on the wrong side for one beat and then correct again. My smile spreading faster in the mirror than on my face, like the glass version of me was eager to get ahead. The first time I caught it, I scolded my brain for chasing patterns. The fifth time, I closed the dressing room door too hard and the frame wrapped the drywall like a knuckle. We posted a sign, "Due to customer feedback, we are replacing our fitting room mirrors." We meant it. We ordered new panes, beveled, coated, twice the price of the old ones. While we waited, we limited fitting rooms and offered generous returns. Sales dipped, then steadied when we put an associate outside the rooms to assist with sizing, which was code for keep people from crying. On a Friday in April, I recorded myself testing the worst mirror. I propped my phone on a hanger hook and hit video. In the screen, I raised my right hand. The person in the glass raised their right hand. We matched, we matched, we matched. Then I rubbed my left temple, sinus headache, long day. The glass me rubbed the right. It was a mirror's right, yes, but what I felt, for a second, was that we had disagreed and my body corrected to fit what the glass had already decided. When I checked the recording later, that moment was blank. A hiccup of static, a glitch gray enough to blame on storage and old apps. I deleted it. I didn't sleep. The new mirrors arrived in wooden crates the size of coffins. We scheduled the swap for a Monday before opening. The contractor, different guy, mounted them with suction cups and ivory plastic shims. When he cinched the last screw and peeled the protective film, the room looked like a different store. The glass was clean, deep, expensive. For a week, no one complained. Then Liv stepped out of dressing room 2 and said, "Why do I look sunburned?" She didn't. But in the chrome strip running along the top of the 3-tier table, she did, ruddy, almost feverish. The mirror showed her normal. Her phone screen, dark, waiting for Face ID, caught her red again. We laughed because that's what's left when you're tired. You laugh and you hope the sound fills the crack. The crack stayed. It spread to the front windows at dusk when the street outside turned to a darkened pane. It spread to the convex bubble mirror over the kids section, the one we used to check for shoplifters. It spread to the turned-off TV in the break room and the metallic seam of the stockroom door and the puddle of mop water that made the floor look like a small lake you could step into if you didn't care about your shoes. Corporate sent an email about unfounded rumors and reputational risk. They told us to stop talking about the mirrors with customers. They suggested we consider non-reflective visual merchandising. We draped scarves over stands and hid the chrome mannequin bases under fabric. The store looked like a stage set after a community theater flood. I started avoiding my own reflection with a child's superstition. Eyes down when I passed the front windows, hand over the phone before it woke. At home, I draped a towel over my bathroom mirror and shaved by feel. My girlfriend, Maya, humored me for 3 days and then asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. She said I was scaring her. That night, when I rolled over to plug in my phone, the black slab of it on the nightstand flashed a version of my face with a deep, seamed frown I wasn't making. I threw a shirt over it like I was covering a birdcage. The breaking point wasn't dramatic from the outside. No thunderclap, no tour group shrieking. It was a Tuesday close, and the register tape jammed. Liv left early for a night class. I signed the deposit slip and walked the floor with my tiny clipboard, checking hangers, taping size stickers, restoring the fake order that daylight destroys. The store was all hum. The HVAC, the soda cooler, the far-off base of traffic. I found a box cutter on a folding table in the back. Mine, the orange one with a notch chewed into the plastic, and brought it to the front to file with the others. I set it beside the POS and turned for the fitting rooms. Dressing room 3's new mirror threw a clean, perfect rectangle of me. My shoulders were rounded from months of stooping to pick up crumpled tags. My tie was askew. I steadied it. The mirror me was faster. His fingers were already at his collar. It felt like watching a friend finish your sentence, a small courtesy, until it kept happening. I smoothed my hair, and the glass version smiled first, a fraction too pleased. I froze. He didn't. He tilted his head, testing the shape of me with an attention I reserve for price audits and in-cap shelving plans. I backed into the hallway, heart tapping high and tight behind my ribs. In the convex bubble mirror, I saw myself from above, shoulders hunched like I was sneaking. The front windows had gone black. Outside, Essex Street showed me a moving shadow of myself in every pane. In each surface, a different expression, neutral, tired, a faint mean grin I didn't recognize. You can talk yourself down from almost anything. Bad light, tricks of angle, a brain built to detect faces. I was mid-speech to myself when the dressing room mirror solved the argument by moving before I did. The glass me lifted his right hand, palm open. Mine stayed at my side. He closed his fingers around something I recognized by the shape more than the sight. The box cutter, orange, alive in his grip like a traffic cone turned into a knife. On the counter by the register, the real one sat where I'd left it. I didn't blink. In the mirror, me, notched his thumb on the slider, and the blade whispered out. I told myself to step back, to step out, to leave the store and go into the honest air. I told myself, it's nothing, it's everything. It's your mind eating itself because you've been staring at yourself for months like a narcissist in a punishment myth. I told myself so many things that my mouth opened and closed with no sound. He took a step. I felt the floor under my shoes, but not the movement. The chrome seam on the stockroom door reflected us both, and in that tight strip I saw another detail that my brain refused to log. In that thin slice of world, the blade was already red. I stumbled, clumsy in a way that made me feel 12. My shoulder clipped the door jamb. Pain lit my arm, and I dropped the clipboard. The sound snapped me, and I did what panic has always told me to do. I tried to make the world simpler. I grabbed the real box cutter off the counter and slammed it into the dressing room mirror. It is shockingly easy to break a mirror. It is less easy to stay uncut doing it. The first hit spiderwebbed the glass. The second dropped chunks like ice. I remember the feel of it. Not a slice, but 1,000 bites. My palms went hot and slick, and then too slick. I heard myself say no, in a voice that sounded like it was coming down the hall. Every reflective thing became a chorus of wrong. The front windows showed a man smiling through bloody hands. The convex mirror warped me into a funhouse ogre with a mouth too wide. The dark screen of the register caught my face at a tilted angle, and for a second I saw the man I am at 40, heavier, tired in a way that has nothing to do with ours. In the slop sink water bucket, I saw a thin boy with my mouth pressed to a line like he'd learned silence to survive. I crawled because standing was too many choices. My hands left prints like red receipts. I got to the front door and wrestled the deadbolt with fingers that wouldn't grip. Outside, someone passed, a couple in black coats, a ghost tour guide raising a lantern. No one looked in. I sank back because sitting felt like the first decision I'd made on purpose. The glass didn't reach out. It didn't need to. I did the reaching, trying to pluck a large shard from my palm and almost fainting when it tugged. I wrapped my hand in a clearance t-shirt, which, please, in glitter that looked like a bad joke, and pressed until the fabric went dark. I dialed 911 with my knuckle and told the dispatcher I had an accident with a mirror. I left out the part about the other me. I didn't want that detail in a recording. On the floor, backed against the mannequin platform, I watched the front window for the reflection I didn't want to see. It obliged anyway. In the glass of the locked door I saw myself where I sat, knees up, shirt wrapped around my hand. Behind that me, in the dressing room hall, a second me stood amid the ruin, head cocked, expression almost tender. He lifted his empty hands and opened his mouth, and for a second I braced for some unearthly sound. What came was worse because it was ordinary. He shaped my name with my lips, the way Maya says it when I've forgotten something simple. When the EMTs arrived, the door reflection showed them too, but in that pane the paramedic was older, hair grayer, tired the way I was in the register screen a minute before. In the polished metal of the oxygen tank I was younger, acne ghosting my cheeks. In the convex bubble mirror over kids' shirts I was someone I didn't recognize, eyes sharp with a meanness I've never felt. I kept my gaze down while they wrapped my hands, while they asked me to count their fingers, while they swept the floor for loose glass. I asked if I could lock up before we left. One of them looked at the ruin and said, "You sure?" I said yes because I wanted the door shut, the reflections contained. They told me to take time off. Corporate told me to file a workers' comp claim and to please not post about the incident. Customers came in the next day to find brown paper taped over the dressing room hall like a crime scene in a grocery store. Liv texted me a photo of the sign we'd hastily printed, temporarily closed for renovation. "You okay?" she wrote. Yeah, I lied. At home, I covered the bathroom mirror again, fixed it with painter's tape like a cheap shroud. I turned my phone face down and slid it under a book. I ate standing up in the kitchen because the window over the sink is a perfect black sheet at night. When I turned off the light, I could feel the room hold its breath. People have asked what I think it was, as if I could choose between explanations like shirts on a rack, fatigue, mass suggestion, a trick of angle, Salem being Salem. Here's what I think now, when I sit with my bandaged hands and the quiet. The mirrors didn't lie. They told too many truths at once. They showed me versions I've been, versions I could be, versions I try not to look at, petty, vain, exhausted, cruel. They showed me myself before I moved, and I moved to keep up. I don't know which is worse. We replaced the mirrors. The complaints slowed. The paper came down. People stopped filming in the fitting rooms and started filming at the selfie wall by the mannequins like they always have. Some nights I close without incident. Other nights, the front door shows me lagging by a breath, my smile a fraction eager in the glass. On those nights I leave the box cutters in the safe and walk home with my hands in my pockets, counting steps, watching for myself in dark windows and trying, quietly, not to blink first. I know every face that lingers through Foodland after 9 p.m. The town slows down by then. It's just shift workers, the nursing home aides grabbing supper, and the same guy who stands in dairy texting until his rideshare shows. I like the quiet. I can float a whole aisle with one pallet jack and the radio hissing low on my belt. Assistant night manager isn't glamorous, but it's steady. Point Pleasant is like that, steady. The oddest thing on most nights is the Mothman statue when I pass downtown. Red eyes, camera flashes, the occasional drunk selfie. The woman didn't look like a problem when she came in. Mid-40s, hair pinned up like she'd stepped out of a church basement, cardigan sleeves pushed to the elbows. She left her purse in the child seat of a cart like people do when they intend to be quick. I gave her the same nod I give everyone. Evening. And she smiled past me like she'd heard the word somewhere before. She stopped me in King Goods first. "Do you still carry Bluebird peaches and heavy syrup?" She said it like a brand I should know. I told her we carried Del Monte and store brand, and she blinked, gentle and surprised, like I'd told her the moon was gone. "Royal Crown gelatin?" she tried. "And that soft wheat bread with the bird on it." "You might mean Sunbeam," I said. Aisle 4. She rolled the cart 2 feet, not moving anywhere, hands resting on the handle like she was waiting to be pushed. "Do you keep the penny candy by the till?" she asked, and I laughed before I could stop myself. "Haven't seen that since I was little," I said. She looked relieved by that, like we'd found a mutual landmark. All shift she drifted like that, in and out of aisles, asking for a thing we didn't sell, a brand that wasn't made, a price that didn't make sense. "Bananas still 4 for a quarter? You keep the glass milk in the crate out back?" She never put anything in the cart. The purse, plain leather, scuffed at the corners, sat in the child seat untouched, keys glinting. By 10, the parking lot was empty except for a pickup and her sedan. You learn to read the lot like a second register. Who's in the store, who's on their break at the vape shop, who's about to come in needing baby formula. I didn't know her car. I told Mike to start fronting detergent, and the intercom dinged for the 15-minute warning. She was at the end of snacks, one hand on the shelf like she was steadying herself against a tide. "Ma'am," I said, "we're closing soon. Can I help you find what you're looking for?" She studied my name tag as if it might tell her the answer. "Brian," she said slowly, like it was a word she was translating. "Do you know where I can find the bridge?" It's never far from the conversation in this town. I picture the plaque, the black and white photos in the historical center, the dates engraved in steel. December 15th, 1967. I was born long after, but everyone I know has someone who knew someone who didn't make it home that night. Ma'am, the bridge is. Just to see it, she said. I've got to make it across. We're on the Ohio side of Maine, I said, suddenly unsure how much of the town's map to give a stranger. But, the new one's west of the old footings. You okay? Her smile lifted and then folded away. She nodded like I'd answered something else. We did the closing routine. Lights up to half. Last customer call, register count. I checked the bathrooms, knocked twice like we're supposed to. I came back around to the front to hand the night deposit bag to the cashier and saw the cart where she'd left it. Purse, keys, the little leather change pouch popped open. No woman. I scanned the aisles with the practiced sweep you learn when a kid hides and their parent is calling from the door. Nothing. Mike, did that lady leave? I asked. What lady? He was on his knees pulling dented boxes to the front. I went to the doors and looked out across the lot. Her sedan sat under the halogen, a soft oval of light like a stage set. No movement. The air had that river temperature to it, damp and not cold. I didn't feel scared yet. I felt managerial. The cameras make a quiet fan sound when they're thinking hard. I took the office key off my ring and went back, brought up front door footage first. At 9:12 p.m., she entered. I leaned close. The lens picks up the shiver of heat above the bakery ovens, the shine-off strapping tape, every harmless thing. She is crisp, more in focus than most. 10:03 p.m. I watch two regulars leave. A kid with a vape tucked in his sleeve who pretends I don't see it. Mike taking garbage to the dock, a moth pinwheeling against the glass. No one else. She never exited. I scrubbed through end cap angles, aisle cameras, frozen foods. Every so often when I paused, she smeared on the screen, compression artifacts. That's what we tell ourselves. Her cardigan ghosting to a silhouette, the cart handle a bright white bar under her hands. Once my stomach dropped because the frame held a shape where a person should be, and then my brain named it. A stack of paper towels. I breathed again. You want me to call it in? Mike asked. His voice had this careful tone, the one people use to keep panic from catching. Let me check the bathrooms again, I said. Then yeah, I didn't call 911. I called the non-emergency number. I didn't want sirens in the lot and flashing lights over a woman who might have stepped out for a smoke or gotten a ride with a friend. Two officers came and did what they're trained to do. Walked through, asked me to replay video twice, peered into the walk-ins, glanced at the compactor gate on the dock, and told me to keep it latched. They looked in her purse with blue-gloved hands and read me the name on the license like it would mean something. I didn't know it. The car was registered to the same name. They had it towed, for safekeeping, one of them said, and wrote my statement. By the time they left, midnight had tipped some internal gauge, and the store felt like a set after the actors go home. The next morning, Donna from Produce slid a folder across the break room table. You like paperwork, she said, which is what everyone says when they don't want to be the one going through it. Inside were yellowed circulars, staples barely holding. People in this town keep things, old ads, tickets from the fair, laminated clippings. Donna's husband used to run night stock in the late 80s. We had a woman then, she said. Asked for glass milk in those gelatin cups. Spooked me bad. I read the prices like they were code. 10 pounds of sugar for 98 cents. Pork loin for 39 a pound. An insert dated June 1966. Sunburst fonts. A cartoon bird on a loaf of bread. Sunbeam. She had asked me for the bird bread. Where'd you get these? I asked. Old Henson kept them. She meant the manager before hours who retired and haunts a barstool on 4th Street. Said he started keeping them after that first lady. Thought it might mean something one day. I told myself it was an old town overlap, an echo in habits. People learn the store from their childhoods and can't update the map. We sell what we sell. The brands come and go. If she'd been a kid here once, she might have imprinted on the bird and the glass milk and the idea that the bridge led out of town and into a future. What scared me was how certain she'd been that I could point her to it. For a week, I pretended the night didn't bother me. I stayed late to do the month-end count and fixed a Ms. Pick in dairy and signed for a truck that came at 1:10 a.m. because the driver was lost on Route 62. On Friday, the store was so quiet I could hear the refrigeration cycle click on and off like a slow windshield wiper. In the manager's office, the camera feeds made a grid of tiles. I told myself I was just making sure the front coolers weren't fogging up. At 12:22 a.m., a cart squeaked. There are 100 squeaks in a grocery store, wheels with flat spots, pallet jacks, the stubborn hinge on the mop sink. But this was the exact pitch the woman's cart had made when she'd pushed it and then not moved. It came from somewhere between canned vegetables and paper products, and it was one squeak, not a series. Like something had remembered the motion and was replaying it. I didn't get up right away. I watched the monitor. Aisle 6 stayed empty. My chest felt like I'd hauled a pallet upstairs. I thought about waking Mike. He'd already gone home. I thought about calling the non-emergency line again and hearing the same calm voice. I stood up and took the radio, because even superstitions feel safer with a clip-on mic. A second squeak, nearer. I moved through the store like I do during inventory. Step, scan, listen. The lights were at half, cast in long shapes. End caps turn a normal aisle into a tunnel of color when the brightness is low. At the mouth of aisle 6, something small glinted. It was the little leather change pouch. The zipper was half open, pennies offset inside like a tiny riverbed. I picked it up and could smell purse leather and something older, violets, like the cheap perfume my grandmother wore when she went to church. "Ma'am," I said, because you say what you said before when you don't know how the next part goes. Store's closed. Something moved at the very end of the aisle. Not a person, the purse sitting in the cart, back where she'd left it, exactly as it had been. I looked at my hand. I was still holding the change pouch. The purse had one too. My scalpel-thin logic sliced and sliced. Someone came back in, a backdoor latch, a prank, a piece of my brain trying to stitch a pattern into one. I took 3 steps, then 4. Then I was pushing the cart toward the office like that would end the scene. Like returning it to where the camera could see would let me outsource the reality of it. "Brian." The voice was behind me at the end where the industrial mop and the promo stand created dead corner. I didn't turn because it would make 2 facts collide, that the voice said my name, and that I was alone. "Can you point me to the bridge?" I turned. The aisle was a clean line of cereal on the left and paper towels on the right, the kind of everyday that never makes the news. I saw no one. The purse in the cart sat open like a mouth. A third thing happened then, the sort of banal, physical thing that only appears supernatural because the timing is wrong. The compactor on the dock cycled. When it kicks on, it does it with a shudder that travels the cinder block like a voice through a pipe. The safety bar was down. We keep it down because corporate gives training videos and the fines are real, but the sound came like a door closing in a slow room. Somewhere behind the dairy wall, a motor dragged and thumped. I don't remember deciding to run. I remember the clatter of my shoes on resin-coated concrete, the feeling of pushing air in front of me. The back hall narrows past the walk-in, and the cooler fan's drone doubles your breath until you can't tell if you're panting or the cooler is. The dock door was down. The compactor was cycling anyway, a big square piston chewing nothing because the bin was empty. The safety light pulsed. A broom handle rattled in its bracket from the vibration. I stood there like an idiot with adrenaline buzzing my hands and felt shame that I'd been scared of a machine doing what it always does. When I turned back toward the floor, the mop bucket rolled into my shin. It sounds ridiculous. It was a mop bucket. They roll if the floor is uneven. But the hallway is level and the wheels don't move unless pushed. The hit wasn't hard, just enough to shout my nerves awake. I stumbled sideways and smashed my knuckles into the metal edge of the doorframe. The pain was hot and immediate, a white stamp on my hand. I swore, loud enough that if anyone had been in the store they'd have heard a very real, very living man cussing at a bucket. My radio hissed. Not the normal squawk when someone keys up, a sound like air passing through teeth. "Front," I said, because I needed a destination. "I'm coming to the front." I moved fast. On the way, I passed aisle 6. The cart wasn't there anymore. The purse was at register 3, right under the camera dome. The little change pouch closed and folded like a bruise. I didn't look for her on the monitors. I looked at me. There I was, a man in a navy polo with his name stitched above the pocket, talking into empty air at the end of a lit aisle. I watched myself reach out, palm up, to nothing. The next day, Donna asked what happened to my hand. 2 fingers were taped together and purple branching out from the knuckles. I told her I dropped a case of soup. People who've worked nights don't usually make you explain too much. They let the story sit in the same place in the room as the time you saw a raccoon in the stockroom or the customer who came in barefoot in January. Small town myths are made of those shifts. I still run the night shift. If you come by after 9, I'll bag your groceries and point you toward the best bananas and tell you when the truck hits next if you're looking for a specific cereal. I can also tell you every sound the store makes and which ones belong to us. I know where the floors lift just enough to set a cart rolling. I know the exact grain of my voice as recorded by cameras that show me talking to empty space. The officers called a month later to say there'd been no activity on the registration. No missing person matching her description from here or Gallia County. A name on a license exists both more and less than a person, I've learned. Donna asked me, tentatively, if the ad folder could stay in the office. For the story, she said. Henson came in and stood by the time clock and told me about 1988, how a woman asked him where the penny candy was, and then set down her purse. I locked up with it still there, he said, and his hand shook lifting a styrofoam cup of coffee. Sometimes, alone, I take out the June 1966 circular and lay it on the desk and imagine the store as it was. Glass milk bottles and crates, paper hats in the deli, a boy getting sent to fetch the bird bread for his mother. I picture a woman coming in to buy peaches and heavy syrup, and the world splitting between what she remembers and what is there. I picture a bridge the town needed to cross, and the people who never did. It makes a kind of sense that has nothing to do with ghosts and everything to do with what memory does to a place. Last week, at closing, a girl in a red windbreaker lingered by the magazines. She was maybe 17, the age where you pretend not to be afraid of anything. "You Brian?" she asked, and when I said yes, she said, "My Nana told me to ask you. She said you'd know where the bridge used to be." She said it like a dare, like she wanted to catch me telling a lie. I told her. I gave the directions like I give them to tourists sometimes, standing on Main beside the statue with the red eyes. She took her soda and walked out into the night. I watched her cross the lot, get into a car that wasn't from around here, and drive away. When the lights clicked down and the store settled, a cart squeaked once in aisle 6. I didn't move. I stood behind register 3 with my bruised knuckles resting on the counter and let the sound exist. It wasn't an answer. It was a fact, like a bridge, like a river, like a town that keeps a folder full of old ads in a drawer because none of US can bear the idea that things disappear for good. I locked up with the purse in the office and a note taped to it. Found. If anyone ever comes to claim it, I'll ask them what they came in for. If they say peaches and heavy syrup, I'll tell them we only have Del Monte now. I'll try not to laugh. I'll walk them to the aisle, and I'll keep my hand on the cart to make sure it doesn't move when they don't. And if they ask me to point them to the bridge, I'll say what I've practiced, straight down Main, west past the footings, and keep going until you're sure you've crossed. Then look back and see if the town looks the same. If they're still there when I finish saying it, then we'll work out the next part together. If they're not, I'll do what the store taught me to do, count, record, and remember. The horror in this place is not that something is waiting for us, but that it leaves, and we're the ones left behind to stack the shelves and explain the empty spaces. I'll keep the night calm. I'll know every face. And when the cameras show me speaking to nobody, I'll start to believe that the legend did what legends do. It found a new employee. They give us blue vests that never quite fit and a 6-digit ID that follows you around the store like a shadow. Mine is 310942. I know it the way I know my mother's birthday and the keypad code to the pharmacy gate. I'm Luis, overnight assistant manager in Bakersfield, the part of the valley that smells like dust and diesel and hot metal even in November. Nights feel hollow out here. All so bright they bleach the color out of you. Forklifts humming in the back like tired animals. Playlists looping the same clean songs at a volume just shy of comforting. On Tuesday, we got inventory. The kind that turns the whole store into stacks of brown boxes and barcode tape, where the floor crew moves in quiet lines until sunrise and everyone counts everything twice. I was supposed to clock out at 2. It was 3 when I finally took off my gloves and reached for the lock on the sliding entrance doors. They opened for someone before I touched them. 15 people stepped in. Not slowly or nervously the way folks do when they see one register open and 3 employees pretending not to, but in one smooth movement like they'd rehearsed it. They formed a loose rectangle, 3 across, 5 deep. The first row paused on the welcome mat, dirty from the last rain, and the rest stopped at equal distances, each pair of shoes landing at the same time. Sneakers, flats, one guy in scuffed dress shoes. No carts. No baskets. Evening, I said, because it's Bakersfield and you say something. We're about to close. None of them looked at me. Their faces weren't identical, not like masks, just ordinary. A man with a mustache, a woman with gray hair, a teenager with acne, a bodybuilder's shoulders in a faded hoodie. Ordinary, except for the way they didn't check their phones, didn't glance around, didn't hesitate. They split down the middle aisle like water around a stone. Half veered right to groceries, half left to hardware. The teenager almost brushed my sleeve and didn't flinch when I flinched. Code front, I said into my radio, keeping my voice light. AP to vestibule. Dina from Asset Protection had been logging brake packs in the office. She answered, on the way, and her shoes slapped fast across the entry tiles. By the time she reached me, the 15 had already begun to select. Not browse. Select. 1 gallon of whole milk each. 1 loaf of white bread each. The same brand of flashlight from aisle 17. Small, cheap, blister-packed. Each hand moved at the same tempo. No one spoke. No one compared. It was like watching a keyboard type a line of text you already knew. Click, click, click. Shoplifters? Dina whispered, more curious than afraid. She's seen the real scary. Guys who hide in bathrooms and leave needles in changing rooms. Or a prank. We're closing, I said a little louder to the customers, and my voice bounced off the coolers. Registers are cash only. Card systems update at 3. It was a lie. The card system updates at 4. I wanted to make them look at me, break formation, do something human. No one did. If they heard me, every one of them ignored me at the same moment. Dina said, "This is Cree," and cut herself off as the first 3 arrived at the front end. Lane 5. They lined up without lines or ropes. The first placed milk, bread, flashlight on the belt. The second set them down in the exact inch-by-inch order. The third did the same. Caitlin, the cashier, is 19 and not easily rattled. She turned on her light and blinked at me. I nodded. She rang items with that deadpan speed that comes from boredom. The first man reached into his pocket and unfolded bills. They were wrong, but not at a glance. The color was just a shade off, the ink too flat, the paper too smooth. You'd notice if you've pressed change into cracked hands at 2 a.m. for 2 years. "Sir," Caitlin started, and I stepped in. "Let me take a look," I said, and the man's gaze slid toward me. Or rather, his head did. His eyes didn't lock to mine. They floated through me, past me, at that point where the candy shelf meets the floor. The bill looked like a bill. Washington's face was right. The number corners were right. The blue security line existed. The hologram flashed when I turned it. The texture was close, a near thing from a good printer. But in the bottom right, where the serial should be, the tiny letters and numbers weren't random. They were my employee ID, printed cleanly on every one. My brain tried to file it under something. A prank. One of the day shift kids messing with me. We joke like that. Tape someone's ID to a pallet jack with post me signs. But this was ink. Perfect. Flat. On a dozen bills. "Luis," Caitlin said softly, and I realized I'd stopped breathing. Hey, we're going to hold on to this," I said to the man. "Do you have different cash?" He didn't answer. He made no move to retrieve the bill or to disagree. Behind him, 12 other hands held bills at hip height, all the same height, all the same angle. Dina's hand tightened on my elbow. I pointed my chin at the ceiling camera. "AP is recording," I said to nobody and everybody. It was automatic, a policy script. My mouth kept going. "We reserve the right to refuse. Tender we suspect to be counterfeit. Police can verify. No one's in trouble if it's a mistake." That got me nothing but the small sounds of plastic and refrigeration. I clicked my radio. "Call BPD," I said. "Let them take a look." On it, Dina whispered, already dialing. The line of 15 didn't shuffle, didn't sigh, didn't react at all. They kept setting down milk, bread, flashlight. At lane 5, and then 6, and then 7 as Caitlin killed her light, and stepped back, and said she was sorry, and I told her to go brew coffee in the break room right now. Each basket went down neat in a growing line as if the check stands had absent cashiers, and the people didn't care. The fake bills lay in a small, steady pile near my elbow, edges aligned. Sirens carry in Bakersfield. You can hear them long before you see the blue flicker paint itself on the white floor. I think about that because the blue never came. Dina hung up and said, "They're 10 minutes out." I watched the clock above cigarettes tick a minute, then 2. It felt like a long time. On minute 3, every one of the 15 turned their head toward the entrance at once, like a flock catching a new draft. I thought, stupidly, that they were listening for sirens too. The automatic doors were closed. The motion sensor blinked red. The glass was clear. I wiped my palm on my vest. "We just have to wait," I told Dina. "We do nothing. We don't escalate. If they leave, we don't follow." They left. Not the way you or I do, with feet and frustration. They left in a way that made my stomach drop, because there was no step, no pivot, no sound of shoe rubber turning. 1 second they were in lanes 5 to 7. The next second the lanes were empty and the baskets were stacked by the gum rack, as if an employee had cleaned up. Somewhere in there my eyes must have blinked. The scuffed dress shoes didn't scrape. The teenager's hoodie didn't swish. 15 bodies became absence, and the aisles breathed like nothing had ever been there. "Caitlin," Dina said into her radio, breathless. "You still in the break room?" "Yeah," Caitlin said. "Do I come back?" "No." We said at exactly the same time. The police arrived to freshly mopped silence. Officer Martinez tilted her head at the baskets, and then at me, and then at the bills. She went through the motions. UV pen, magnifier, questions in a gentle voice like she was more worried about me than about crime. I don't blame her. I kept repeating myself, and that's what people do when they're shaken. The bills didn't pass the UV test. The blue security line was a print. But the hologram, I started. She nodded, not condescending. "Some counterfeiters are getting better," she said. "But this," she pointed at the cereals. "This is either a joke or they wanted you to see it, Luis." That last part put a cold hand in my throat. "Why me?" "I don't know," she said. "Someone messing with you? An ex? You mentioned you supervised nights. Maybe someone with access." "Our doors," Dina said quietly, frowning at her tablet, "didn't open. At least not according to the log. The motion sensor registered nothing between 3:01 and 3:07. The camera in the vestibule showed emptiness for that stretch, too. Not black, not glitched snow, not camera offline. Just a clear, boring picture of the entryway. If I scrubbed back, I could see the 15 walking toward my wide-angled lens until 3 hours, 1 minute, and 12 seconds. And then the footage jumped to me and Dina standing alone at 3 hours, 7 minutes, and 34 seconds. No splice, no telltale jitter. Just absence that felt tight, purposeful. It was worse than a glitch. A glitch would have meant indifference. This had intention. Martinez took statements. She bagged the bills. She gave me a card. "Call if they come back," she said. We nodded. Everyone left. At 4 a.m. The store softened around the edges the way it does in that last hour before day. We closed down the self-checkout lights, scanned the overnight pallets into the system, and turned off 10 of 12 registers. My crew clocked out in pairs. Dina went home. Caitlin's boyfriend idled a car with a peeling hood in the lot. I felt fine. If I told the story to myself with a different voice, funny prank, weird group, bad money, it almost sat down where it should, on the shelf of things that happen at night and only feel wrong because you're tired. I was halfway across the entry tiles, pushing the metal lock bar into place, when the parking lot looked back at me. 15 figures stood beneath the sodium lights, all spaced evenly, all facing the doors. I know distances at a glance. How far a kid can run before I catch them, how close a truck can get before the beeper starts. They were 50 yards out, just at the top of the first lane of painted arrows. The lights gave everything a flat, bruised color. I told myself to breathe. The lock bar clicked home. I killed the motion sensor. The doors sat in their metal tracks like a jaw clamped shut. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for your service, Luis." Sent with one of those balloon effects that felt like a slap. "Not funny," I said out loud. "Okay, not funny." I didn't go outside. That should count for something. I didn't go challenge them like a hero in a movie. I moved back, slow, until I could reach the counter where the phones live. I picked up the PA mic and said, calm as I could, "The store is closed." The sound of my own voice came back from the ceiling speakers, warm and tinny. In the parking lot, the 15 tilted their heads in unison the way they had before, acknowledging nothing. Every camera that faced the lot showed me the same strange thing. There were the 15, but in the corner of camera 7, the angle that catches the reflection off the vestibule glass, There was also a 16th shape. Me, or someone in my vest with my walk, the slight hitch in my right shoulder from an old baseball throw. The 16th shape stood with the 15 and matched the slight sway of their bodies in the desert breeze. I rubbed my eyes and the picture didn't change. I tried 911. The call started clean and then fell into a scrape of static so rough I pulled the phone away. When the volume settled, there was sound, but not a dispatcher. My own voice, recorded earlier tonight, maybe 30 minutes ago, talking policy into the PA. We reserve the right to refuse tinder we suspect to be counterfeit. I hung up. I dialed again. Same thing. It wasn't supernatural. It was someone with a signal interceptor or a recording shoved into the line or a timing trick I didn't understand. But it was a something that had hands behind it. That felt worse than magic. The 15 took a step. Not toward the doors, not closer. Sideways. Each to the left, a precise 3-foot adjustment. A rectangle turned diamond. The shape held for 3 breaths. Together, they took another step, the same distance, the same timing. My mind tried to map it the way you track forklift patterns in the back. Their formation made lanes, and their lanes made a funnel pointed at me. I walked backward until I hit candy racks. A stand of mints toppled, discs skittering like coins. I thought of the bills in the bag in the AP office. 310942, 310942, 310942. They had not meant to pay. That wasn't the point. Behind the cigarettes, there's a drawer we keep for manager keys. Mine was there because I am not stupid enough to take my keys outside to a parking lot standoff. Still, something cold leaned into my chest when I checked the drawer and felt nothing. I looked. The drawer held pens, tape, a fuzz of dust. No keys. On the camera, the 16th shape in the lot lifted its arm. On my vest, my employee ID number sat over my heart. Okay, I told the air, and my voice shook. Okay, you got my attention. The banging started on the garden center doors. Not hard, not even urgent, not a demand to be let in. A light, rhythmic knock knock knock, as if someone was finding the beat to a song. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. It traveled along the glass wall toward the main entrance, the way sound travels through a wall when a neighbor nails a picture frame into a stud. It wasn't loud. It got into my bones anyway. I snapped the vestibule lights to full. The boom made shadows jump. Through the glass, the 15 didn't flinch. In my periphery, movement. The teenager with acne was now first in line. He hadn't moved the way a person moves. He had shifted like a slide in a presentation. One beat, he was at the far right. The next beat, he was center. I backed into lane 5 and grabbed the heavy black poles we used to rope off lines. I set a little barricade in front of me. The act felt theatrical and stupid, and I did it anyway. People have barged for less. I whispered, "Don't come in," even knowing they didn't need to hear me. The auto doors nudged against their lock. My stomach went cold. The motion sensor was off. I had shut it off. But the doors still flexed, like pressure air on the other side pushed them and eased. My brain brought up a memory. That time the midday wind got into the frame and made it breathe. I told myself it was that. Air, pressure, heat. Nothing in the lot moved. In the camera reflection, the 16th me turned to look at me. I know how that reads. I know how memory turns you into your own unreliable witness. But I watched my other self's head tilt to an angle I hate seeing in pictures and lift a hand. The 15 lifted their hands too. A wave in slow motion, hello or goodbye or something between. The PA clicked on by itself. My voice came through, manager to front. Manager to front. Dina had said it at the beginning, but it was my voice now, layered and off-key, announcing myself to myself. The knock-knock began again, polite and patient, in the exact rhythm of my own pulse. I grabbed the stack of baskets the 15 had left neat and pushed them across the threshold between the second set of doors and the first, making a clumsy barricade. The top basket bit my palm, and I felt pain like a zip of electricity. I looked down. A thin line of blood wrote itself across the skin between thumb and forefinger where the plastic edge was cracked. I sucked air and tasted metal. The cut wasn't dramatic. It was small and present, and mine in a moment where nothing else felt that way. Luis. Not the PA. Not the phone. A whisper from behind the cigarette case. My name pronounced exactly right. The way a supervisor says it when she's trying to be human. The way my mother says it when she's mad and soft in the same breath. I pivoted, and there was no one there. The whisper came again, pitched just under my own voice, matching my breath. Luis, Luis, Luis. Each repetition aligned to the knock-knock, like we were all inside a metronome. I threw myself at the door control and wrenched the physical override. An ugly metal lever you only touch when the power is out in summer makes the automatic brain of the store forget to be a door. The glass shuddered in its track and then clamped harder. The lot swam in orange light and stillness. The 15 stood. They'd been closer a minute ago. They weren't now. Someone had broken the shape, just slightly. The bodybuilder's shoulder too far forward, the gray-haired woman's toe pointing at a wrong angle. And that seam in the symmetry undid me. I started to laugh. It wasn't pretty. It sounded like someone else. The laugh broke into a sob, and then something in between. I get it, I said. You got your show, right? What do you want me to do? The teenager took a step. Daylight would have made a human. Night made a geometry. He placed something on the asphalt. A white rectangle. He took another step back to his precise place. The lot went still again. I didn't go out. I couldn't. I used the custody pole, the long metal hook we used to pull dropped hangers from under racks, to fish the rectangle up through the slight gap at the base of the door. The edge caught and scraped. I pulled a receipt through. White, glossy, our brand of thermal paper. Blank. No ink. Not even the header. The store prints its own name at the top of every receipt in block black. This one was snow. Except when I tilted it under the vestibule light at an angle that hurt my eyes. I could see a faint ghost of letters stamped into the heat stock, like someone had pressed but not printed. 310942. Again and again, down the length. No items. No total. Just my number, lightly debossed a dozen times, as if a hand had practiced writing me. The final thing happened small. The door breathed. The metronome knock stopped. The PA clicked off. The 16th me in the reflection lifted his hand one last time. The 15 lowered theirs. Something in my chest let go and the world rushed back in a roar of refrigeration and electricity and my own blood in my ears. The lot was empty. They didn't walk away. They were there, and then they were parking stripes and heat mirage. The ghost of the rectangle stayed. The receipt in my hand, white and weightless. I pressed it flat against the counter and taped it inside the drawer where the keys should be, and it made the smallest sound, the crinkle of a thing you shouldn't keep. Dina asked me the next day if I wanted the security report. Officer Martinez called to say the bills were fake in a way that didn't teach the lab anything new. Caitlin told me she'd had a nightmare about shopping carts. I told them I was fine. I told them I'd slept. The truth is I'm not sure I could explain what would make me fine. A face, a reason, a hand behind the glass. I keep thinking about the rhythm on the doors and the way a rhythm gets into you. I listen to footsteps now. I watch the line at the register like it's a species I don't recognize. When one person puts milk on the belt and the next copies them because it's milk and it's what you buy at night, a pulse travels up my spine. The receipt drawer sticks sometimes. When I pull it, the taped paper flutters and rubs itself against the underside of the counter and makes a whisper close enough to my name that I have to bite the inside of my cheek to stop my body from answering. Some nights I park far and walk in because the extra distance gives me time to count the shadows. Some nights I park right under the camera because I want everything that happens to me to be recorded even if the recording later shows nothing. Mostly, I lock the doors on time and stand behind the glass and tell myself that if 15 people ever come back, I will not move toward them or away. I will let them be lines and angles. I will wait to see whether they want to buy milk or only remind me I am part of a program I didn't notice I'd joined. I still wear my ID over my heart. I thought about taking it off. I didn't. That feels like a rule I don't get to rewrite. If I watch the vestibule camera at 3 a.m. long enough, I can almost convince myself that the glass only reflects me when I'm standing there, and that the other version stays outside with the people who don't blink. I stand in the doorway with the lever ready and listen for the knock, and sometimes I hear it, and sometimes I'm just hearing my own pulse using the door as a drum. Either way, I count. Either way, I wait.